Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to remind everyone to please mute your mic if you're not the speaker. If you have a question, remember to put your hand down afterwards and mute yourself when you're done. Go ahead and put in the chat your name, where you're located, name of your center or agency that you are with. And then I know that the meeting minutes from April were sent out in an email along with the agency updates, the feedback loop. Sorry, I'm Julie Schroth. I'm located in Kitsap, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this committee, along with Katie, who I don't see yet, but I do want to take a minute to say we're so happy to have Dave Meyer joining us as a tri-chair now. So it's a little less stress on us if we have a third. It's been a while. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to mention a couple of things from the agency updates. There was some discussion. There was some language in there about the community cafes. You may have read about that. They have many of those scheduled now. They've got one scheduled for Wenatchee tonight. And they're having local licensing as well as statewide licensing folks attend those community cafes. In the feedback loop, there was a lot of discussion last time about the training portal and called Develop, and that's currently on hold. Hi, Katie. So my tri-chair, we're all here now. The Develop is on hold while they make significant changes to that. And I know that there was a lot of discussion in one of our meetings about things that people would like to see in that, and also in the 30-hour stars. So hopefully they're considering that. So I just want to take a second here and ask Dave to introduce himself, since he's one of our new chairs of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, thanks. I'm so excited to be a part of the committee here. Dave Mayer. I'm the Director of Early Childhood Education with the Office for Catholic Schools. And prior to coming to this position, about almost 4 years ago now in August, I worked in the YMCA for a couple of decades, both in operations camp and childcare. So really excited to be working with Katie and Julie and Aaron and the rest of the team, and excited for today's conversation.
Thank you. Glad to have you here. I mean, you're always here. You've always been a great contributor, but glad that you're part of the team now for the exec board for planning agendas. If you haven't been able, if you have not received a copy of the agency updates or the feedback loop or the meeting minutes from April, you can, drop your email in here. You may not be on the email list, and you can request that. But there was some data about how many grants had been offered last year and some grants that are coming up. There was also some information about a new unit that licensing is going to be or is in work creating. So we're going to be hearing more about that. Looks like almost everyone said, okay. Well, I think, do we want to put some, maybe put the feedback up on the screen so we can all look at it for a sec? We've got a little time. Unless you dropped it in the chat and I didn't see it. No, please, let's see. We've got agency updates in there, meeting minutes, and feedback loop. So I'm going to take a look at the feedback loop real quick. Oh, that's right. Okay, so we had a few meetings. This group had a few meetings to discuss the licensing and CPS investigations. They created an FAQ doc, which we provided feedback on during 2 meetings. And it is now under review by their legal team, and they'll be coming back to this group once the final version is approved. Let's see, we've got the agency updates. They talk about the Community Child Care Forum, the grants, and grants that are coming up. They're going to be opening a new child care equity grant in the spring of 2025. Yeah. I think that is it. It looks like we've got a lot of providers here today, which is great. We've got a lot of great topics. So I'm just going to send it over to Katie and we can move right into the first topic.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry I was a few minutes late. Darn Starlink, living out in the boonies. Yeah, so this morning we're going to just take about 15 minutes and have Erin Kerrigan and Marlene White go over some of the recommendation report updates. So I will turn it over to you girls.
Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Kerrigan. I'm the Community Engagement Administrator here at DCYF. And I'm not going to take up a bunch of time today. I just wanted to give a quick update and a little plug on where we're at with the annual FSKA recommendation report. So as a refresher, per the Fair Start for Kids Act, ELAC is responsible for producing a joint report. It's in conjunction with DCYF to the legislature every year, providing recommendations on the phased implementation of FSKA. So last year was the first year that we did the report. And we are well under it. We are well into the process for this year. So we've had a couple sessions and where ELAC is providing feedback on what they would like to include in this year's recommendations. Just as an example, last year, the recommendations included a ton of stuff, but topics such as language access expansion, increased collaboration when it comes to grant opportunities for childcare providers, increased funding for mental health services, things of that nature. So the FSKA covers a lot of ground. So the scope is pretty wide. And this, I think I already mentioned, it's a joint report with DCYF. So ELAC collaborates with DCYF to produce these recommendations to the legislature. So I just wanted to give a plug that if any provider supports members or childcare providers would like to participate and contribute to the FSKA recommendation report, you guys are more than welcome. On the screen, you'll see the next few opportunities. So really July 9th is the last big opportunity to get a good working session in to provide feedback. So if you are interested in your voice being heard in that report, I recommend coming to the July 9th report development session. We'll include more information about how to join that meeting in the follow-up email if you need it. And then we're also going to work on it a little bit for about 45 minutes during the August 6th ELAC meeting. So you're welcome to join that as well if you would like to. And then there will be kind of a final review on August 13th. So that's the timeline for this year. We'll probably be shifting the timeline next year, but we'll keep you guys up to date on that. But I just I have a link. Let's see. I don't have the translated link for this right now, but I think one exists. So we'll be sure to send that out. Just in case you're curious, I'm including a link to last year's. Oh, and Jessica already put it in the chat, so we're good there. Jessica included some links to last year's recommendations, as well as a brief snapshot update that DCYF drafted just to kind of mark where we're at with the topics from last year. So I know that's kind of an information dump, but there's where we're at. We would love to have you if you're interested. Does anybody have any questions about that process?
Hi, Erin, this is Sandy. Just wondering if you have a link available to sign up for the upcoming sessions.
Yeah, we can grab that link and throw it into the chat. We'll also be including the invite information in the follow-up email. But I'll see, Jessica, is there something we can throw in the chat for that in the meantime?
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, sure. All right, well, that's all from me. I know I only needed a few minutes, so we're a little bit ahead. I'm not sure if our presenters for the next topic are with us yet. Oh, Jason's right there. Jason, are you guys able to start a few minutes early?
Yeah, we can start early.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Dave, I'm going to kick it over to Dave to introduce the topic, but thanks everyone.
Yeah, sounds good. So now we have the opportunity to have childcare subsidy administrator Jason Rameke and administrator Karen Carter to provide an overview of the subsidy audit process, including how our audits occur, overpayment process, and provider rights and responsibilities. And as they're kind of going through their slides and things, just if you have any questions or comments, if you could put those into the chat box. We can kind of monitor those as we're going, but then once the presentation is over, we'll look at it as well, just to be able to make sure that everything was answered. And then kind of also jot down some of your notes. And at the end of this particular presentation, we'll have a little quick Menti reflection time so we can share some feedback from this as well. So Jason, I think if you're ready to go, we can get started. And thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate the time that you guys are given.
Thank you, Dave. And as mentioned, we have quite a lengthy topic to discuss, but we tried to distill it into some really straightforward information at a high level. We'll have some time for questions, and we'll try to make sure all the questions y'all have get answered before we leave. Good morning, I'm Jason Rameke. I'm the Child Care Subsidy Administrator, and my team is responsible for Working Connections and a few other sub programs as well. We call ourselves Child Care Subsidy Program. I also would like to introduce Karen Carter, who is our Child Care Quality Assurance and Continuous Quality Improvement Administrator. You'll hear from her in just a moment. As we can move to the next slide, and we'll start by sharing why we have to do audits. Because Working Connections Child Care is federally funded, we have a number of Code of Federal Regulations that outline our requirements around auditing. One of those is the statewide single audit under CFR 200.501, which outlines the requirement for states to do an independent audit for any program that receives federal funding. Additionally, the program requires the agency that is responsible for administering the CCDF program to have a robust quality assurance program, and we have to meet the 45 CFR 9868 specifically to CCDF requirements, and we call out how we do that in our CCDF plan section 8.1. There's a number of questions in there that go through this. I'm only going over these in a high level. All of these are hyperlinks, and in the presentation that we send out, we'll be able to click on each of those links. As mentioned, they're federal regulations and RCWs and plan language, so it is full of fun legal requirements. Let's move to the next slide, and with that, we will jump right into Karen, and Karen oversees the team that does our internal audits, and she'll take us through the next few slides. Thank you, Karen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jason. So as outlined in our CCDF plan, which is the plan we have to send to the feds to tell them how we are going to meet the requirements of the grant. We have two kinds of audits. We do for providers. We do random audits and we have focused audits. And so the random audits are the vast majority of what we do. And how those work is that all of the current childcare providers that we are working with kind of go into a system and through a process where they are randomized, and then we put in the number of audits that we want, and it plucks out that number of audits. So everyone is in there. And so if we were working with you last month, you could be in it again for this month. And we try not to let that happen, but sometimes we just can't help that. And the QA team conducts approximately 220 random audits each month. Sometimes it's more than that, sometimes it's not quite that, but there are 6 of them. 6 of the auditors, and they take on the audits themselves. And I've job shadowed them while they completed their audits, and it's quite a process, and they have to know quite a bit in order to do that. So the focused audits are include the referrals that we get from licensing or eligibility staff who see that there's a problem somewhere, like with attendance or payment or billing or something like that. And so they refer that provider to my team to do an audit on, so that they can see if what they think may be happening is or is not happening. Then there will be a follow-up audit if there are identified payment errors in previous audits. So that one is not random. That is a focused audit, because we're looking again to see if the problems we worked on with you, with the provider prior to that, are being followed. And so the QA team conducts approximately 30 focused audits each month. Sometimes it goes up to 45 and sometimes it's down to 20, but it's an average of about 30 focused audits per month. And the state auditor's office reviews approximately 200 of these audit records per year for the statewide single audit. And they do that based on their required audit methodology. Ready for next slide, Jason? Okay, why not? So the records that we request, attendance and others. So we may also request attendance records to confirm that a provider has billed correctly when a family has an overpayment. So if it looks as though there has been an overpayment, we like to look at the attendance records to verify that there was indeed an inaccuracy there. We also ask for them when we're conducting fraud investigations, although it is not my group that does the fraud investigation. It's OFM, I believe, that does that. And as part of licensing inspection, sometimes licensors, if they're having trouble getting some attendance records, they will ask us if we've got them, and we will provide them to the licensors. We don't request them for the licensors. The licensors request them themselves, and we request them for our own purposes, but if we have them, we will share them. DCYF may also ask for receipts. When we look at the payments and for the reimbursements, we've got to sometimes have the receipts to see that there really were that number of tickets to the field trip place purchased, or those kinds of things. And so we will use them to just back up what we've got in our audits. We compare that to the billing, the invoices that we get, so to see if the attendance holds up the the billing piece of it. We may also ask for, so there we go, receipts when reviewing payments for reimbursements, provider policies to confirm private pay practice. And what we mean by this is that we can't have providers charging us for things that they wouldn't charge someone in the community for. And so we need to see it's usually their handbook. I think they're still required to have a handbook by licensing. We need to see that it shows that the requirement is everyone pays a registration fee, everyone pays, the same fees, so that we can show that we are not allowing them to charge us for more than they would any other family in the community. Next slide. Fees. Sorry, I didn't say
We have a
fees.
quick hand raise if
Oh.
that's okay, Karen, before we move
Sure.
on. Julie? You're muted, my friend.
Thanks. So I'm wondering about the handbook, because for a lot of providers, these are very lengthy. And I'm wondering, now that I'm hearing the rationale about what you guys need, is there not a way to just simply ask for what you need rather than the entire handbook?
I believe that we can take that section of the handbook rather than the entire handbook. It just depends on what we're actually looking for. What we really want to see is their fee schedule, and that it matches what everyone else gets. So if we got that, we would be happy with that.
I mean, like my center, we don't have fees and fee schedule in a parent handbook. The fee schedule is separate. And then there's the
Okay.
contract. So for me, the handbook has always felt like, why do they even need that? It's not
Yeah.
even relevant to anything financial.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the auditors are very good with about working with providers to get the information they need without overtaxing the providers. So if the fee schedule is separate, then we would take the fee schedule, as long as it's obviously from your business. So it would need to have the provider name somewhere on it, or letterhead, or whatever you use for that.
Right. Because as you guys might be aware, fees go up pretty regularly, at least once a year, and handbooks are not recreated every year. So it's handy, I think, to have a separate document.
That makes total sense, Julie.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Karen, and thanks, Julie. The key for us here is really just establishing whatever verification we can to identify the fees around payment. And we want to make sure we're not asking for very specific things, and so we'll note this, and we'll also we'll take that as feedback and how we can work through requesting very specific information that we need in the audit, and not for books of things we can.
Yeah,
Thanks,
handbooks can be pretty lengthy, and they're just information for families. Yep. And a lot of providers have contracts that have the fees in them. So.
Yep.
And this may be addressed later before we go to the next slide, but how many audits are conducted on providers each year? Is there a ballpark number?
Well, anybody got a calculator? It's 220 times 12 would be what we do for the randomized audits, and then we would do probably, I would say, 25 to 30. So Jason, are you multiplying?
Yeah, it's about 3,000 within our internal team.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, guys. Karen, thanks for the couple of questions there. And I think we've kind of cleared the chat at this point. So.
Okay, so the provider's responsibilities. We hold providers responsible for several things, and this is all highlighted in WAC 110150034. And these responsibilities include, but are not limited to, following the licensing requirements, such as the capacity, age, and hours of operation, maintaining attendance records using an electronic attendance system, following billing procedures developed by DCYF, And so these, the licensing requirements, we know because we have access to their license, so we can see the age and the capacity and all of that. And so the records that they maintain on the electronic attendance system, they can use ours that DCYF has, or they can use a different one and just send us their attendance through those. And the following of the billing procedures, we have a billing guide, and in the trainings that are available to providers when they first come on, part of it is that to go over that billing guide and answer questions that any questions that they might have. DCYF, we provide the billing guides for each provider type. So we've got 3 different provider types that we're looking at. We're talking about licensed centers, licensed family homes, and family, friend, and neighbor care. That was a little hard for me to get out, sorry. And so they each have different requirements and responsibilities around billing. So they each have their own billing guide that speaks specifically to what they are responsible for in their billing. Do you want the next slide, Jason? Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer the questions as we go along in the chat too, so trying to keep up there.
I'm sorry, Gloria just asked a question, and I'm sorry, she was asking if providers use the electronic attendance system that DCYF owns, that we can look in that system, and we can look in that system and see the electronic attendance there.
Once we go through the audits, sometimes we identify that there is an overpayment. Sometimes there's underpayments, and those are addressed separately. We're just focusing on overpayments today. When there's an overpayment, we refer to those as vendor overpayments, and we have to follow very specific RCW when working with vendors who have overpayments. DCYF contracts with the Office of Financial Recovery at the Department of Social and Health Services to work through that very formal legal process and work through the collection of vendor overpayments. OFR will send the legal notice that includes the overpayment amount, the reason, and it will also include the provider's administrative hearing rights, which is the appeal process for that formal overpayment. We highlight this because once an overpayment is established, it's very much a legal process to undo that. And it's important for providers to contact OFR and follow the instructions in that notice to either make payment arrangements or request a hearing. And OFR has the legal authority to make collections using liens and garnishments. So once an overpayment is established, OFR is responsible for collecting that. Let's move to the next slide. If a provider disagrees with the overpayment, it's important, as mentioned, to request an administrative hearing in a timely manner. And the administrative hearing is a formal hearing with a judge where both the vendor and DCYF present their case. DCYF is represented by an administrative hearing coordinators, and for child care subsidy, they're part of our team as well. Their job is to also help vendors through the process of the administrative hearing. The judge will schedule a pre-hearing conference prior to the full hearing where more information is shared. That includes the judge confirming representation and the issues at hand. And during the pre-hearing conference and also in the notice, there's very specific information about legal representation that's available to providers for free or low cost. And the DCYF hearing coordinator is also able to provide that information.
Jason, just one more question before we move to the next slide. From Gloria, and this goes back to the underpayment, but if it's an underpayment, we have the ability to receive the underpayment after the result of the audit?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think that catches us up in the chat.
Yep. Great. Just to recap here, once an overpayment is established, like that turns into an audit, discussion, technical assistance process into an overpayment established and a collection process, of which that administrative hearing is able to pause that and work through that formal appeal process. Let's move to the next slide, please. Sometimes vendors provide information during the hearing process that allows the agency to modify the overpayment. Because the hearing is already established, a formal process must be followed to close out the hearing request ahead of the hearing, and the assigned hearing coordinator will help explain the options to resolve the hearing. So once an audit is completed, there's information shared, some technical assistance with the auditor. If there's an overpayment, it goes to OFR, and then if a hearing is requested, the hearing coordinator is the primary contact for providers to work through the legal side of the overpayment. Let's move to the next slide, please. I highlight the administrative hearing process because it's important for us to be able to coordinate with providers and help through that process. We have a number of hearing coordinators and a number of auditors, and in this presentation there's links to the contacts for those folks. So in our resources, again, there's contacts for our program audits, which includes an FAQ and contact information for the auditors, and also our hearing coordinators, and also the Office of Financial Recovery for providers to reach out and ask very specific questions. And then we also included a link on how to request an administrative hearing.
Jason, then just a question that popped up. Do overpayments happen often? Is there any data that can give numbers on that?
Yes, we do have overpayments, and they happen pretty often. And that's one of the reasons why we have to do so many audits. We have been in corrective action with the state auditor's office in the past for payment accuracy when it comes to provider payments. And I don't have that number off the top of my head, but that's a very formal published number related to the state auditor's office. And then we also publish annually an overpayment report, which I don't have the specific numbers, but we'll relay those on related to overpayments. Usually those are numbers I have off the top of my head, but we are working through all of our decision packages, and I have a bunch of numbers floating through my head, and I don't want to misquote them. So we'll get those for you, Susan and group.
Cool, thank you.
So like I mentioned, we went through that information pretty quickly and try to keep it at a level that everybody is able to follow. But if we have time for questions, we definitely try to resolve any questions we can.
Yeah, in addition to that data piece, alongside that, are there reasons that overpayments primarily happen? There's a question in the chat right now. Is that happening mostly because children that are not full-time, or is there kind of a percentage of the reasons that those overpayments are happening?
Yeah, I'll share the most common reason for an overpayment with the provider is for not having any attendance records. So that's the most common. And if a provider doesn't have any attendance records, that means that any payment that they claimed payment for in that month for children receiving subsidy is a total overpayment. So if a provider, say, has 10 children and their monthly or their rate that we're paying is $1,000 a month, that's $10,000 of overpayment for that 1 month for not having attendance records. Very closely related to that is having the proper process for sign in and sign out for parents, and making sure that the attendance records we have are valid with parent sign in and sign out. And if you're using our system, that's use the 3 different ways using our electronic attendance system. If there are other systems, it's important to follow WAP required sign in and sign out processes. Those are the 2 off the top of my head, and those are the vast majority of overpayments for providers. Um, we'll just stick to those two as the primary. There's a few other things that are hit and miss around overpayments. But if we're able to have valid attendance records for everyone, our number of overpayments would decrease significantly.
It's like Julie has a question.
Thanks. Yeah, I have another one. So when I look over the list of things that the subsidy audit folks request, child attendance records, obviously, yeah, I'm going to send that in. List of child absent days, that's part of the attendance, so that would be in there. List of provider holidays, so let's just say it's none. List of provider training days during that subsidy audit, none. List of field trips and permission slips, if any, none. Parent handbook, I still, take issue with that because I just think it's unnecessary, especially being that the next bullet is documented rate table and documented registration fees. So since that bullet exists about the rate table and the registration fees, what else from the parent handbook could be called out to be specifically requested instead of the entire handbook? To be in compliance.
Yeah,
with, for you guys being in compliance with the feds.
I think the challenge here is it depends on what providers are claiming, right? Not all providers claim field trip fee reimbursement, for example, for the providers who are able to claim field trip reimbursement. That's only needed if the provider was reimbursed for field trip fees. If a provider doesn't have field trip fees, for example, then that's not needed for the audit. So
okay.
As we work backwards, registration fees, like that's one of those things. If in the month that we were auditing, we paid a registration fee, that's something we want to consider. But typically registration fees are one time a year. And so we may not need that information if we were only reviewing that 1 month of payments. So we don't want to ask for information that is above and beyond what's needed for the specific audit. And we try to be specific to the payments that we're reviewing.
I'm just thinking there must be something that you guys are looking for in the parent handbook that could be called out specifically. And I'm wondering what that is.
The parent handbook will have policies around field trip fees, registration fees, and I'm trying to go from memory. Also, closure days or holidays that you're closed if it's not otherwise documented.
Okay, so any of the topics that are in the bullets, that's okay, that makes sense. Okay, so could that language be just pulled out from and sent in those pages then? Because honestly, I would just change my parent handbook and put all of these things on the same page of my parent handbook. So I'm only sending in one page.
I get it. And like the challenge here, Julie, is within DCYF, we're not the authorities on what is in a handbook, because I think that licensing have some requirements around handbook and what is or isn't in handbook. Ultimately, what we need is just some additional verification of the payments that have been claimed to make sure that they align with the private pay practices. And we don't want to get into specifics of that has to be in the handbook, has to be in other things. We just need that backup. And we're trying to allow flexibility for providers to do that however they want to. So I don't want to prescribe anything or change procedures or say this is what has to be, and change any authority, if that makes sense.
Obviously, I'm one of those people that gets annoyed with how much documentation is requested for a subsidy audit. I understand anything related to attendance, absences, and money. I get it. I don't get all of the other stuff. Our licensor has access to our handbook. They usually have copies in our file. So it is confusing to me why the subsidy folks would request that, because that gets requested on every subsidy audit. So if you get a subsidy audit, let's say you get one every 6 months, maybe you've got a family that's whatever, you've got a few families that are being investigated for their subsidy practices or whatever, and then I also get a random one. It's a lot of information to request on a regular basis from a provider that gets hit with audits often. Not that I'm getting hit with audits often, but you've said, I mean, it said somewhere in here that you could be, like, you could get audited every 6 months or something. So for me, I just wonder, why is so much documentation requested? The stuff not related to attendance, absences, money, I don't understand the rest of it. So if there's something specific that could be listed, I would appreciate, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Thanks, Julie. We'll take that and we'll take that as feedback. Some of the other areas relate to hours of operation and those kind of things. We'll see what we can do around streamlining if we can.
All right, a couple of
definitely understand the administrative burden of participating with subsidy and
Thank you.
participating in the audit process, right? Like we definitely understand, and we continue to improve, and hopefully we've seen some improvement over the last few years in this. We have some ways to go to. Thank you.
So a couple of quick
Yep.
questions in the chat, and then Lois has her hand up. So the first one, does the state require other sectors that receive payments from the state to use a state required recording system?
I don't have authority over other state systems. I can answer as a participant in some of those systems that other state agencies do require state use systems, or something similar. Like, I can just answer that way. I don't have oversight of what their requirements are broadly. And just to highlight, the state provides our electronic attendance system for free, and providers have the choice to use a different system if that's something that fits. Like, that was a decision made early on with the implementation of attendance based on feedback from a variety of groups.
Got it.
Yep.
And then a little conversation in the chat that if there's anything to add, but Jen asked, why does absence matter if the child only has to come one day to claim for the entire month? And then Janelle followed up with difference between center versus family home versus FFN.
Yep.
We all bill and are paid differently. Anything else
Yep.
to add to that one, or that's kind of clears that?
Yeah. I think that's part of it, but also absent days matter. If a child is absent the entire month, then providers aren't able to claim. And as I mentioned, that's one of the most common errors, in that providers are not providing attendance for all children, and the children haven't attended and have claimed payment for those. In addition to attendance, for some provider types, we're claiming based on very specific units, and sometimes a holiday may allow for that 23rd day of payment, and we need to highlight that that holiday was one of the allowed paid days, with the absence to allow for the 23 days versus a 22-day claim. Like, just getting into the details, like that plays out for absent days and holidays and closure days with for the allowed closure days. And then to add to what Janelle is saying, yes, centers and family homes and FFNs all have different units and slightly different billing processes and claiming processes.
Let's go to Lois, who had her hand up, and then we'll go back to the chat after that. Lois, are you?
I am. Thanks, Dave. So I have two questions. Good morning, Jason. First, I'd like to know, I know you mentioned something about this, that the state electronic system is available, and that system was antiquated when it was brought on board, and wondering when the state is going to consider looking at another vendor for that system. It was never user friendly. I'd imagine it probably still is not. So if there's any plans to look at an updated system. And then the most important question is, in adding these additional guidelines, and we're already so many, what is the state's plan to deal with the disproportionate amount of providers of color that seem to always be audited more so than their counterparts? That is an issue that's been brought up before. It's, in fact, if I remember, there was a whole group that was doing some work around this. It might have been pre-COVID, and not sure what happened with that, but I can't imagine that concern has changed. So how do you plan to address those two things?
And thanks, Lois. The electronic attendance system, I can speak to current use. There isn't any effort to replace that electronic attendance system. The group that provides that system is actually adding more and more states, and more states are moving to that system for their program. And we haven't started an exploration process in changing that. So like that, I don't have a better answer for that. As related to audits and potential disproportionality, our current data is not showing that there's disproportionality in our audit process, and a big piece of that is making sure that we're using that random process, and that random process is a controlled random process that is outside of our group. It's true IT random generator that identifies providers and provider audits. And if there's specific concerns, I know those are brought up, and we can address those and look at those in the case-by-case basis. I do want to answer another question in chat and kind of go back to the handbook. Part of the ask for handbooks and policies also is to discuss and identify alignment, and make sure that the information that we have is accurate in current practice. What we see is licensing hours or hours of operation may be different. And so when we see attendance records for sign-in and sign-outs outside the hours of licensing, that brings potential issues, and the information that we have may be outdated. So that's part of the work that we have to do, when instead of asking for all that information up front or having the information in the licensing file, it may not be updated, and getting to the more common information or more current information, because we don't want overpayments if at all possible. Right, like it's a disservice for us, it's a disservice for the program. Most importantly, it's a disservice for providers, right? Like it's an unfun process.
We had one more question in the chat to catch up. Why are providers at risk of payment based on family's choice to bring their child or not? We hold the spot for the child and then lose revenue. That's another disincentive to serve subsidized kids. What can we do to correct so that providers aren't punished for serving kids on receiving WCCC?
Yeah, we definitely understand the difference between private pay practice and subsidy practice, and I am sure you all have heard about the CCDF requirements. I think if it wasn't last meeting, it might have been the meeting before, where Matt Judge probably came and talked about upcoming CCDF requirements and looking at changing that payment. So we are working through how we can change to mirror the private pay market a little bit better. Totally understand the absent day process and the verification of all that in our current circumstances. That's just where we're at with our requirements currently, and hope to change in the near future.
All right, thanks, Jason. We don't have any other questions in the chat at this point. If anyone else wants to unmute and ask a question. Otherwise, we do have the Menti reflection question up there as well for any other questions or feedback. And Jessica was kind enough to just put that back into the chat as well. I just want to thank Jason and Karen for spending time with us today and answering the questions and going through their presentation. And we'll kind of do last call for any other questions. Otherwise, thank you guys for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me.
Excuse me, I forgot to ask this question. When do you send in the audits and requesting records, do you send in those in the provider language? Like for example, in Spanish, Somali?
Did you guys
Karen,
get that question, Jason?
Yeah, Karen. Our audit processes, is that process translated in Spanish and Somali in addition to English?
Know that it is in Spanish. I'm sorry, I can't answer about Somali. I would have to,
Okay.
I would have to check that out. I wouldn't want to give you false information.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. We'll double check that. I know
Okay,
our intent
thank you.
is to continue to work through provider requests in the 3 languages. We'll just double check that.
Thank
Lois,
you.
Lois, can I double check if you have another question or your hand was just up from before?
Thank you, Dave. My hand's up. I'll lower it now.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Jason and Karen. We really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you as
Thank you.
well.
All right. I'm going to turn this over to Julie now, who is going to introduce our next topic for the day.
Thanks, Dave. I think we had a Menti on the topic that was just presented. So if community engagement could drop the Menti link in the chat, everybody.
Yep,
can
it's in there. It's
Great.
the last thing in the chat for now. Yep.
Great. Perfect. So everybody make sure that you put some feedback in there, and I'm glad to see Travis is here early since we're running early. Thanks, Travis.
Ruben,
So our next topic is licensing appeals. And so Travis is our DCYF senior child care administrator. So we are eager to hear from you. Thanks for being here, Travis.
Yes, and actually this is good timing because we are looking at revamping our process a little bit. So I'll get into that. So today I'm going to talk about the dispute process. This is the internal process that happens with licensing. So licensor comes out to do your monitor review or comes out and does an inspection, and there's an outcome from that goes on the inspection report. So then at that point you disagree, maybe you see it a different way, and so you're going to ask for a review. The way that we have it set up is 2 levels. So the first level is kind of at the local level with the supervisor. We know that our licensors cite the wrong WAC sometimes, or they misinterpret the WAC, and the supervisor can fix that very easily at that first level. So you have 10 days to ask for a review. It goes to the local supervisor, and then they can either uphold it then at that point and say, yes, it was the correct WAC, and their interpretation was correct. And then what happens is it gets kicked back to the provider and they can ask for the next level of review. Just some historical things that we heard from a lot of providers that they felt like the old dispute process was all done in-house at the local unit or local regional level, and they never felt like it was reviewed kind of statewide or it had other folks put into it. So what we decided to do then is take the second level and make this a level where we bring 5 individuals around the state, and actually try to keep it that the folks that are reviewing it are outside. So we don't have folks that, like the supervisor that was involved, sit on this review panel. It's all separate folks. Then they review the materials and review the dispute, and then they come up with an outcome, and then that goes out to the individual. If for some reason that group gets stuck and they can't come to a decision, then it comes to my level for a final review is what happens. So then it's kicked back out. The other side of this is what we wanted to do was use these reviews as an opportunity to train our staff. So if we saw, similar super reviews coming out of one area, then we could use it as a training tool. If we saw the same wax being questioned over and over, then we can, make changes to the WAC and that kind of thing. So this is our first full year of doing monitor since recovering from COVID. And so we're getting ready to kind of look at that data and see if there's areas that we can improve and that kind of stuff. So so once you go through that final level of review, it'll come to your plate, and that will be the outcome of that. What I want to keep in mind is that there are some WACs are serious or immediate violations. So if that does come up on the inspection report, you have to address those immediate, even though you're going to dispute them, right? So you might disagree with it, but it still needs to be dealt with because of the level that, and frankly, those are very easy to deal with. And rarely they might get disputed because of something having to do with it, but those are very, very easy. Providers come into compliance. So it's not an issue. So the one thing that I will say is this does not speak to anything that gets on FLICA, right? So facility licensing compliance agreement, right? And that is a whole separate review process from this review process. And so those are in a lieu of licensing action is what it is. So these are the lower level kind of lower risk. So one thing that I want to talk about, and I would love to get feedback from everybody that's here today on this process, is we put in place first time forgiveness, is what we have. And you can't dispute first time forgiveness right now. And what is being brought to my attention is that, yes, it's a nice tool to say, okay, yeah, we get first time forgiveness, don't worry about it. But if there was a mistake with first time forgiveness, you don't get a chance to review that, and then you lose your first time forgiveness, is what I'm being told, is what it feels like, right? So it feels like, I could have disputed the one, and then I would have still had my first time forgiveness, and then it wouldn't be in my record. So what we are kind of toying with right now is what I want to hear is, should we just get rid of first time forgiveness so that folks have the option to go for a review? Or should we kind of keep it the way it is and folks like first time forgiveness? But what I'm being told by all of providers is that it doesn't feel like forgiveness because you're still documenting it. It still goes on a sheet. It's still recognized. So even though we're looking at it as first time forgiveness, it doesn't feel like first time forgiveness for all of you. So I would love to hear folks' thoughts on that, because I saw Julie's head nodding, so I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I did have thoughts about first time forgiveness after my recent monitoring visit, because it was really he said versus I said. And the hardest part for me is that I can't respond to anything that I'm written up on. I was written up on a crack in the corner piece for a cot. And at that moment I said, oh, okay, well, I have parts. I'll replace it tonight. No big deal. Well, I would have liked to have been, since he was writing me up for it, I would like, I know that's not the same as first time forgiveness, but I'd like to be able to note that the way that it used to be before we all got computerized, right? And I would write it down. I have replacement parts. I will replace the cot corner tonight. So that's something that I would love to see change. Providers should be able to respond to, including the first time forgiveness things. I would like to be able to respond to each of those things so that is seen by whoever might see it, whether it's on Child Care Check, whether it's like my next licensor might review it, who knows? I would like my words to be seen, my response to be seen.
Yeah.
I agree with Julie. I mean, I got written up on, the licensor didn't think there was enough floor coverage. Well, I could have just gone back in a resource room and grabbed some carpets and put them in if that's what she thought. But instead, she wrote us up on that, and not a technical assistant, but an actual write-up, when we could have fixed it within 5 minutes. But being able to respond, I think we've lost that communication piece as a provider to say, okay, yes, I agree, or I'm going to fix it tonight, or, whatever it may be. And having these reviews and audits, I think, is great. But like Julie said, we're missing that key piece at the moment when the licensor is there. We don't have anything on paper or in writing to be able to say, oh, yes, we agree, or no, we're going to fix it, or XYZ. So
I just want to say, I think your example's a little different, because I would have argued nonstop about that, because there's no wax saying how much carpet or rug I have to have in my classrooms. So that's a whole different thing.
true. But being able to respond at the moment is still we're missing that piece as providers. Where did it go?
And I think that was the idea when we came up with first time forgiveness. First is like, we wanted to give a little grace, right? Like, we knew it was a heavy lift with these new wax, and we wanted to give folks so it didn't feel like we were just hammering everybody with all these new wax, which I know maybe we didn't accomplish that, right? But that's what we were trying to go for. And I think that what we did with the first time, we caused a whole different problem with a review process, right? For you all to feel like you have an avenue to dispute, right? Is what we've created then. And so I'm trying to figure out how to maybe unwind what we did, or fix it and make it better. So if you have ideas, I would love to hear from all of you. There's a hand raised. Go ahead, Dee.
Hi, Travis, thank you. I recently had a licensure visit and tried to sort out, what she was having me respond to and what was technical advice. It seems like most everything that she commented on could just be technical advice. Plus, there was a mistake that she made in terms of assuming that we were out of ratio when we weren't. She was in one classroom, and when she came into the other, and because I had changed out with an assistant who was in the class previously, and she had seen me not in there, then she assumed that they were under compliance, but she didn't see how we traded off, and then she wrote us up for it, and I tried to respond to these things in the review, and then I wasn't ready to submit it yet, and I came back to it again, and everything I'd written was gone. So there was no way to save my response before I was ready to submit it, because busy lives at work, we don't just spend an afternoon on that document. So there's a problem in not being able to preserve what we've written there. So I just gave up and I didn't write it again.
You were given the opportunity to write something up in response? Wow.
Well, yeah, there's a place where you can dispute it, right? You fill it out, you write it in, right? So I did a couple of them, and then I thought, okay, I'll look at this one more time before I submit it. And then when I went back, it was gone. So to me, that technically it's not very user friendly.
Okay. I've made a note of that. The other thing that I would encourage folks to do, okay, we have a timeline of 10 days. Okay. So you have a 10-day response, but I have encouraged supervisors to be somewhat lenient with that, right? So if things like that happen where you're saying, hey, it was erased, and pick up the phone and call the supervisor and ask if you can have, a couple extra days to get it in, right? Because we had to have some sort of timeline, but there is leniency there, and supervisors will review it, right? Especially if it's things that are kind of technical things that, you know, that we can get rid of, frankly.
So Travis, there's a couple of things in the chat I want to point out before we go to the hands. Susan said, think about the language of first-time forgiveness. It's extremely disrespectful. It also implies there will be other things identified that we are doing wrong or bad.
Yeah.
And then Jen, I'm thinking she may want to expand on this since her hand is also up, but she wrote the insurance companies are not, they do not see serious or immediate violations as a big deal. Jen, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would love to. So one thing I don't know if DCYF and anybody else who is dealing with this completely fully understands is that when licensors are putting down serious violations or something that needs immediate correction or something like that, that is affecting our insurance rates and is making it so we our rates are either going up, we are being dropped. I will give you an example. So we recently had our monitoring visit in our kitchen that no children go into, mind you. One of our magnetic locks got bumped when somebody pulled out a bottle. And so there's a little tiny switch that just honestly got flipped. Licensure came in, pulled the door. One was locked, the other one was not. He literally said it. The switch was flipped, closed, locked immediately. That is currently on a report, on my report, as a serious violation. Now, I also, there was a lady that was being spoken to again about the whole broom incident, which still is absolutely asinine. If children can have brooms to sweep the floor, why can't I have a broom to sweep the floor? But she has a serious violation on her report for the broom being in the wrong spot. The insurance companies are not digging any deeper beyond the fact that they look at your reports and they say serious violation, and insurance is getting harder to get. Rates are increasing. Companies are not providing insurance for childcare anymore. So all of these things have an effect on what is playing out for other requirements that DCYF has now put on our plates as well. So these are all things that need to be talked about and looked at. You know, the broom violation, honestly, Travis, why couldn't have that been a, hey, just a reminder, your broom should, you know, it needs to be away from the kids, right? It should have just been that. And then, you know, maybe the licensors have a note section that says, you know, when I go to ABC childcare, I just need to double check the brooms. Right? Like, why is it something that has to be, you know, where is that technical support? Where is that, you know, we want to have a good relationship with our providers. If you guys are constantly looking for what we are doing wrong all the time and not offering the opportunity to just be like, oh, hey, by the way, your cabinet was unlocked. Is that an easy fix? Oh my gosh, yes, it is. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that bottle hit it. You know, I'll make sure that my teachers pull on it to double check when they close it.
Yeah.
You know, or so all of these things are having an effect on what is happening to us in other realms of requirements that we have from DCYF.
So you said something that, so insurance companies, they don't recognize first time forgiveness. They're just looking at it as it's just a violation then, right? Because it's written down.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And to be honest with you, they're not even looking fully at the disputes. So pretty much once it's on paper or once it is documented, that has an effect on us. That has a huge effect on us.
Yeah, we all get that a serious violation might be, I mean, we get what a serious violation might look like, but using the broom example, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's not a serious violation, right? Like, and those are the things that we're correcting, right? Like the broom thing, like that's silly, right? Like those are the type of things that we need to fix. Okay. This insurance thing keeps coming up, right? Like over and over and over and over again. And I'm just kind of speaking out loud here, right? But like we need to figure something out so that what the insurance companies are looking on at Child Care Check tells the whole story.
Mhm.
Or we need to look at maybe providing something for insurance companies, right? Like some sort of, I don't know if it's licensing history or something that tells the complete story so that the blanks are being filled in, right? Because here's the thing. If a facility wasn't safe, we would be involved in taking some sort of action to keep kids safe, right? So we need to tell the whole story because, you know, if we're giving you a license and you're operating, we're trusting that you're doing what's right for kids, right? And so we need to collaborate and figure out how to do this insurance thing is what we need to do.
It is interesting, the idea of having a separate document for insurance, but I do worry that once it's on Child Care Check, it's, you know, insurance companies can go read it anyway. And
Well, Child Care Check was not designed for insurance companies. It
well,
was
they know how to
designed.
find it, apparently. There's a lot
Yes.
of
I was gonna say,
companies
that
are,
doesn't matter what it was designed for, they know
I
where to
know.
go.
I know, but so let's give them something else, right? Like, because Child Care Check was designed to give a snapshot of what's going on in a facility over the last 3 years, right? So parents could go and look at that as what it is, right? And then if they need additional information to make a decision where they want their child to go, they can ask for that additional information. But it was not designed for insurance companies to get on there and start dinging all of you is what it was not designed.
causing unexpected problems.
Yeah.
So it's something that needs thought. I want to go up to Veronica, who's had her hand up for a bit.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hi. So I wanted to share that the dispute process, I find it kind of hectic when they're doing, I know you shared the process that goes in it. However, when I have no say when they're doing the review in the review panel, I feel it's not fair for us because we're not there, and they, at least in my case, they're reviewing what the licensor wrote in the notes, and I have no say. And I think that's a huge downfall because we're not there to explain what really was there. You know, like there was barriers, there was ways where a child will not reach it. So in my case, you know, and I just in general feel it's not fair for us because if it's happening to me, it's happening more than usual. And also it does the part of it not being designed for the insurance agencies, I think because we're public entities and that they will consider, insurances will consider whatever's in there that we may have in our FLICAs.
So Veronica, I would say that the dispute process is your opportunity to share that, right? Now I know that you're not in person, you know, with that group sharing it, but that is your opportunity to say, this is how I felt like I was meeting the intent of the WAC and that I was in compliance, right? With
Yeah.
with that group.
Right. And although that process happened, I didn't feel I had no say in it whatsoever. And then for it to still stay there and remove the part that they reviewed the notes, however, it just seemed like they rearranged the wording from, after reviewing licensors' notes to after reviewing notes or something like that. It was the same thing, just turned around. And I had no opportunity to defend myself. And it is, something that is a concern to many of my educators in the community. And I feel that there should, you know, be an opportunity for us to show up or write something and give our part.
Yeah, and one thing that I do encourage is supervisors, and maybe we need to do a reminder of this, is that at that first level of a review, that they pick up the telephone and have a conversation with the person, or they go out on site, or, you know, at that first level, so they're gathering as much information as possible. So if it does go to the second review, somebody has had a conversation, right? They have had talked to the provider, and because I do think there's a lot of things that can be just figured out at that local level with the supervisor. Now, some things can't, right? And they need to get out of the local level and actually, you know, be disputed and looked at.
Yeah, because I did the process, and I was also had to do it, you know, within the timeline. However, I know you shared that you're encouraging them to be lenient with the time, with the days. However, if it's not written in anything, what isn't written is not gonna happen. And I feel like my community would be fearful to not be able to submit something within the timeline, because there's nothing written that there may be flexibility. And I've seen that, you know, some people had the days to just went by and were not able to, you know, voice their why or their opinion. So yeah, I do agree licensors should take part, but in my case, it did happen. And I just felt like it was like, oh, well, here's just another one, you guys take care of it. And I had no say.
Yeah,
because they went through what the licensors notes were.
what I would like to do is maybe since we're finishing up our first this year of monitor visits, which mean that we've gone out to every single provider, right, and touch base with every single provider. We'll have some good data here of what it looks like for the review process. And what I can do is try to gather some data on this of what it looks like with how many are being overturned at the supervisor level, right, that aren't even going up. And then what does it look like when they go up to the level? Are they getting overturned? Are they being upheld? You know, and what are some of the trends? And then I can give that information to all of you so you can look at that. There is this common theme of nobody wants to do nobody wants to dispute because they're worried of this backlash from the licensor.
Because it's happened.
I would argue no. I would say,
okay, well, that's good.
I would argue then you need to pick up the phone and have a conversation with the supervisor, right? If you feel like there's retaliation there, and you know, then that's not acceptable, right? That stuff
Exactly.
needs to be brought to our attention, and then we can deal with that. And we have dealt with a lot of that over the years when there's been issues that have arisen, when we've been able to navigate through some of that stuff. So
I agree, because I did have that support. I have, you know.
Yeah. Yes, definitely in your case, Veronica, right? You know,
Correct.
I think that, you know, the dispute process, I want to be very clear, that is your rights as a provider to go through that process, right? So if you don't feel like you can do that and that there's going to be backlash, we need to hear about that and deal with that issue head on.
Correct.
That's not okay. So
yeah, because I just felt our opinion, or our, you know, that our point of views need to be considered. And I'm glad that you're putting so much work into it so that that does happen. And I again encourage the you know, the surveys that come out, or some kind of a way for there's like accountability, like you were saying, doing something where I feel they could have accountability for what is going on out there.
yeah.
Okay, we've got some stuff in the chat.
Yeah,
Eva asked if there are corrections being made, are they going to be corrected on the reports?
I'm not sure what that means. What corrections? What, I'm not sure.
I mean, I assumed
I
that it
was
was
just
related.
talking about Yeah,
she's
it
here,
was like
good.
the broom issue, like that is not a serious, it wouldn't be like, I mean, like you guys mentioned, it wouldn't be such a high serious thing. Are they gonna, if they're correcting those things like that, I know they're doing training and stuff, but are they gonna be corrected on the reports as well? Because these are legal documents. Anybody that goes and looks up our information is gonna find these things on there still.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a way to go back and fix it. So if we make a correct, like, so the broom situation, so we fix it so that it's not an immediate issue. Unfortunately, it won't go back and take it off. It's a historical kind of snapshot in time. Just like there's old wax that are probably not there anymore, that is in some of your guys' history that you've might have violated, but it's just a snapshot in time. So we don't go back and like backdate it, retro fix it, fit it, whatever you want to call it. We don't have the means to be able to do that. Yeah, I also want folks to know that it's a snapshot in time, right? Is what it is, right? So you can be an amazing provider for a long time, and then one bad day happens. It's a snapshot in time, right? We have to
That's exactly why it shouldn't go up there, Travis. There's historical data to show. I mean, people do have bad days, and this is the point. So then when you get caught doing something bad and that's what shows up, that's where that punitive nastiness comes up. And you have to look at the full picture. So when you say you can't do anything about it, does that mean it is the system is set up that you can't remove something like in an accounting system, or is it that you won't do it?
Well, what it is a snap. I'm going to say it again. It's a snapshot in time, right? So, and keep in mind, the other thing is that childcare check is on a rotation of 3 years. Everything then it falls off every 3 years. It gets cleaned, right? So it's kind of like that speeding ticket, right? I drive down the street. I was speeding that day. Maybe I was trying to get my kids to school and they were late. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Doesn't mean I'm going to go out and rob banks but it was a bad day. That's going to be on my record until I stop speeding. And my insurance might say, hey, you can't do that. You need to drive better, right? Is kind of what it is. And then it falls off, and then my insurance, it's not on my record, is what it looks like.
Yeah, there's a lot complicating our need for insurance, and rates not going up and not being able to renew. So it's an important topic. The next one in the chat was from Lois. Why only 10 days? Why not change the policy to 30 days to give providers more time to respond? That could be changed via rulemaking, correct? If not, how can it be updated? And I'll just add that, licensors, DCYF has a pretty long timeline on things related to getting back to us. So it is frustrating, the 10-day rule.
Yeah, you can pick up the phone and ask for an extension from the supervisor. I think it can't be 30 days. Because there's multiple levels. So if we did 30 days at one level, 30 days at another level, it causes way too much of a backlog. The other thing is that I think it's a process that needs to go quick so that it's not dragging, that you guys aren't getting a response. And the other thing is if we made a mistake in the system, we need to fix it, right? So you don't want it sitting out there 30, 60 days that we made a mistake that we could have fixed in the first 10 days. Because I do think, again, I want to look at what our data, because I think there's a lot that are being overturned at that initial level. I could be wrong, though.
So Travis, if I may jump in, I'm sorry, I have to leave at 10:30, so I asked Dave to be kind enough to share my question. That seems more like an internal issue, that providers are being penalized. I think 10 days, depending upon when your licensor returns everything to you, if it's the date of their visit and say they come on a Friday, they don't send you something until Wednesday, you've already lost some days because it goes from the date. So yes, you can call and ask for an extension, But why do that when it's something that can simply be fixed? Even if you moved it to 15 days, which gives people 2 weeks, why not err on the side of a little bit more time? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Lois, it starts on the day when you receive the compliance agreement, right? That's when the clock starts. It's not the visit. So if the licensor drags their feet for a week and doesn't send, the clock hasn't started. So I'll go look at the 10 days and see if there's any room to maneuver there. But I would definitely encourage folks, if you need more time, pick up the phone and ask the supervisor for more time. If they say no, I would love to hear that.
Okay, Susan put in the chat, when it comes to insurance, less is more. A document from DCY feels like a slippery slope to me. I think child care check needs to show a balanced picture. Out of the hundreds of pages of rules, it should reflect all the rules we're meeting too. And it does seem like, why create an, I mean, you know, I know you were brainstorming in the moment, creating a new document for the insurance companies, but if it was just a balanced view on child care check, then we, you know, where we were able to respond and say, it's already been corrected less than 5 hours later.
But Julie, to be honest, I don't know if you all will ever be happy with child care check, right? It's somewhat airing dirty laundry is what it's doing, right? I mean, it's tough that the feds are requiring this, right? That the compliance agreements are out there and everything is out there, right? I mean,
My
because-
issue is that I can't respond. So,
And I think it's a narrow view of what the feds are asking for. I mean, I've actually met with Paul Noski and will continue to meet with him, but I think sometimes when the system is designed to catch you doing something wrong versus looking at what the intent is, which isn't a air your dirty, if child care check is really for airing your dirty laundry, then we don't even, I mean, what is the point for us to even argue? You want it to be that way.
No.
Well, it feels like it when you say things like, well, it is what it is, and we're airing your dirty laundry, but it's a snapshot in time, but it's not a balanced snapshot. So
I'm having a conversation about it is what I'm doing. Trying to have an open conversation with you about it. And I'm asking you, if you have ideas, tell us.
I don't think that child care check is about airing dirty laundry. It really should be something that's fully transparent, that is showing what's happening in a center for parents, which is why it was designed that way. I mean, I realize that what the FLICA or our observations are showing are all of the violations. It would be nice if on those documentations, it showed things that were happening, that were standing out, or things that were good, so that it was a balance. If you're going to report something for families to look at, why show all the negative? You should show the negative plus some positives. So if the child care check process is really for families, then there should be a section on it where you are allowed to enter information about your program that offsets the difference. And then at that point, go ahead and show the violations. As providers, we're going to self-report when we make mistakes anyways. We want parents to know that we're humans and that we're going to do the best that we can to care for their children. And that shouldn't be looked at as a deficit.
Yeah, because if that, I don't know, the way I heard it, maybe it wasn't with ill intent, but the way it sounds is what I've heard others licensors. It is what it is. 3 strikes, you're out. Oh well, and there's no say with what we have to say. And I'm not trying to say that you said it in a bad intent, but if that's the language that's being used when I'm not around, there's no reason for me to second guess why the trends with licensors sound alike. You know what I mean?
No, I don't. Because
okay, so what I'm trying to say is, you may have not had, and I know it's, you know, freedom for you to share, but what I heard is kind of what I've been hearing with other licensors. And if that's the climate that's being talked, or how is being talked about, there's no second guessing why some licensors have that authority hat on and will say anything on their side. And like the previous lady that just shared, there should be a space where we're able to share what really happened so that parents have the opportunity to decide, do I want to take them there, or oh no, because they're going to put my child at risk, and have things on our FLICA. This is our career. And unfortunately, there's many educators that are just giving up. And these kids are being taken care of in facilities or not facilities, in homes with up to 30 children. But hey, they're FFNs and they're not being checked. Is this what we want our children to, the environment?
Veronica, that's not happening. There's not 30 kids in FFN. That's
okay. Well,
that's not accurate.
It might not be accurate, but I know what I'm telling you. There's even people here that know that there are up to 30 kids during summer. Maybe not all of them are FFNs, but maybe half are. And I think that there's some effort that needs to be put out there also, some energy that's being used with us and other places in the community as well.
I would just like to say that if you know of someone providing that level of care, definitely report it, and at least they'll go look. The consequences may not be what you want them to be, but okay, I'm gonna jump over to the chat. Let's see. Katie said supervisors do not communicate with providers when they go out. When they go up to them for help, they just take the side of the licensor. Oh, okay. So they're she's saying they support the licensor rather than. I think most of us feel that. We don't, I've said it myself. Well, they're just going to side with their licensor if I go up to the supervisor level. So
it's why I need to hear about those situations that happens, right? If that's the feeling that folks are getting, then they need to escalate that to the next level, to the area administrator or to my level, so that we can deal with those, because that's not what we want to be sending. Again, this is a dispute process is your right as a provider, right? And I'm here because I want to improve this process, right? So
yeah, I want to understand the process and how to dispute. Okay,
hello.
so Jens,
can I ask a question? My name is Violet Ramos. Okay, so I had a question. My concern is, just to bring an example, my husband has a gun license, right? A permit. And he had to be a citizen of the United States to get that. How can the DCYF allow people that don't have documentation because they have, what's it called? ITIN number, which is not even a social, to have daycares? Because I used to be a caregiver. As a caregiver, I was trying to help a client, get someone, because they had an ITIN, the caregiver IP provider one, I believe it is, could not hire that person because they were undocumented. And I told them that they had an ITIN and they said, no. How can, like the Pasco area has so many, Othello, Royal, all these people don't even have permanent residence, and you all are allowing that. And caregivers are needed in all state of Washington. And if they don't have a permanent resident, they cannot work for the state. And how can the state allow these providers that don't even have papers because they have an ITIN, they have childcare? That's taking our privilege away, because we would have more kids in our in our childcare home, first of all. And that FFN, yes, a while back it was reported. And what did they say? Well, make a report out of it. Go and tell them, make a report. And it's like, okay, this girl honestly has about 26 kids, not 30. She has 26 as we're speaking right now in her house. And I think that's not allowed. That's not correct, because I'm pretty sure she don't have files like us that we're gonna have to have files because it's FFM. But going back to the legal documentation, you guys are allowing people undocumented to have childcare. And that gives us more privilege because we're here. And if a Hispanic comes, they have to be a citizen of the United States to get a gun permit. Why is it allowed? Why do you all, the government, allow these people that don't even have permanent resident to have a daycare in their home? You know,
Okay,
haven't
so I
anybody
just want to
brought that up?
say, Travis, I think at some point we're going to need to have a conversation about unlicensed providers. You know, we've been talking about it for years. Providers have been complaining about it for years. There's not heavy consequences that DCYF can implement. And I think this is a topic that should come to one of our meetings.
Yes, because that girl, excuse me for interrupting, she used to have a license, but you all revoked her license. So what did she do? She jumped to FFN.
Okay.
And you guys do nothing about it. And she has 26.
I want to bring us back to the topic, but I do think that, you know, that's a really great topic for another meeting. It's a source of frustration for every provider out there. So
yes, and the documentation, I think that's very important. You guys have to bring that up because it's not fair. They have an ITIN. They don't even have a permanent resident. I mean, I understand if they were permanent residents, but they don't even have a social. That's taking our privilege to have more children.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the chat. There's a lot in there to get to. Jen asked, why not offer a Zoom or in-person meeting for disputes?
Thank you so much.
Yes, I made a note of that.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask if that's, I mean, you bring up a good point. In the day and age that we live in, you know,
yes,
it's a lot easier to do.
Thank you for understanding.
All right. And I will say I requested a Zoom for my dispute, and so it'd be nice if licensors just flat out offered that, I suppose. Circle back to Susan's comment about first-time forgiveness. What other language could be used?
Yes.
Definitely a question for this group. Okay.
Or do we want to get rid of it? Right? Like, or do we want to get rid of it in the sense, and why I say that is, then that would give you the right to dispute everything, then is what it would do. Because if you all are thinking, it's like, if it feels like we're just regulating, right? And we're calling it first time forgiveness, right? We're the only ones, then maybe it's not working. Maybe we need to get rid of first time forgiveness and allow, you know, everything to be disputed and it run through the dispute process and then fall off your record, kind of thing.
So maybe that's also a topic that we could bring to another meeting. Just talk about first time forgiveness and maybe shape a new process.
Well, that's kind of what I was hoping to get today, Julie. I wanted to get a feel from all of you of your thoughts around first time forgiveness. And I mean, I have gotten a lot of feedback. I think
I mean, there's a lot going on when you bring a topic about appeals, then we're not going to focus just on first time forgiveness. Appeals is really broad.
So Travis, if I can ask the question, why can't why can't you appeal a first time forgiveness? Like, why is that not an option? I mean, pretty much from what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's one or the two, right? Like I can either appeal it or it's a first time forgiveness. There is no option for both. But if I appeal it and I am correct, it shouldn't count as my first time appeal or my first time forgiveness.
So you're saying your suggestion is that you keep first time forgiveness and then you're able to ask for a review at that level and then you can keep your first time. If
I am correct, if the appeal goes my way, which is not a very high chance, but just in case it does, if the appeal goes my way, I still get to keep my first time forgiveness because technically I didn't do anything wrong and there's nothing for me to be forgiven for.
It's not a bad idea. Like I mean it's that whole idea of like if you win it then you keep your flag kind of thing, right? But if you lose it then you lost that first time forgiveness kind of thing. Yeah,
we just need to be able to appeal it or dispute it or whatever. Okay, so Linda asked, it's also unclear whether we can submit additional information between the supervisor review and the review panel.
So you're saying that it's, I think you can at that, like if you get additional information or something changes, you can add information. There's nothing saying that you can't. Was somebody told that is what this is saying?
Yes, so we had a dispute that went to the review panel, and we had asked before it went to the review panel, could we add additional information like photographs? And we were told that we had to submit it within the 10-day dispute window, and there was no clear direction in terms of, you know, if we needed that we would have to submit all of the information within that 10-day window, or whether there was an additional window where we could provide information before it went to the review panel. It just, there are no instructions. And so just having some clarity there, I think would be really helpful.
Yes, because in my opinion, there's nothing that says, because I looked at the policy procedure before I got on this, it doesn't say anything of that, like the clock, you know, stops and then you can't keep, it just says you have to review it within 10 days. And if we're being lenient on the 10 days, then yes, you can add. I'm sorry that that happened. Linda, if you want, I don't know what the outcome of it was, but if you would like to review that option, I'm more than willing to have a conversation offline with you.
That sounds great, Travis. And I think just kind of moving forward, having some sort of written protocol that we can review, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, so Lois asked about it dropping off after, I think you addressed that. You said it drops off after 3
years.
Okay, and then let's see. Jen said CPS DCYF investigations can take forever, and that's okay. I'm not sure that's true. Is that true? Forever?
No, not forever, but so
we've had one take up to 6 months, Travis.
yes, but that's not forever. That's 6 months.
And there was no police involvement, no law enforcement involvement, which is technically what the RCW says. So that was an awesome one.
I will tell you this. So we have, when you're talking about complaints, we have 45 days childcare licensing to close the complaint. Okay. LDCPS also has 45 days, but they can extend it to 90. There are exceptions if law enforcement or some other, you know, there are these exceptions to extend it, but we should be closing these very, very quickly, right? Within the 45 days, especially if there's no other circumstances, right? But if there's other circumstances, that's the only time that it will go over the 45. I will tell you this, Ruben is coming later on today, and I think Taylor is to talk about the complaint unit. All right. I'm going to give my pitch for the complaint unit right now because this came up. This complaint unit will help specialize us to be able to have more of a specialized approach with the folks that are doing complaints and looking into those investigations, and we'll separate that out so that we can have licensors be more of a support for all of you and not have to do the complaint stuff. So I think by separating those two stuff, that'll clear up a lot of this. It'll make it better, right? That you don't have your licensor one day is there, hey, I'm here to help you, and the next is like, hey, now you've done something wrong and I'm going to put my police hat on, and you know, like that doesn't feel good as a provider. I know that. So yeah. So so listen to what Ruben has to say this afternoon or later on about the complaint unit, because I do think that could help a lot in a lot of areas, especially with some relationship stuff with providers and stuff.
So I do appreciate that, Travis, but for this one, my point being the fact that you guys get 45 days to do stuff and we get 10.
Yep. I hear you.
So, right. So that's where Lois was at with the 30, you know, why not, instead of requiring us to have to ask for that extension, why not just make that extension already happen? So then we're not, you know, going, oh shoot, what's today? I need to call, you know, so why not just make that happen?
Yep.
Well, I'm getting ready to go to a family reunion and I'll be gone for 14 days. So like what if it comes in during something like that type of time frame?
That is a perfect example where I'd say pick up the phone and call that supervisor and tell them what's going on, and their response should be, yeah, let me give you a little bit more time to do this, not no, Julie, you know. And if it's a no, we need to hear that. That's not the approach that we want to take.
Okay. Okay, so Linda asked another question. Out of curiosity, during the dispute process, how do you guarantee an independent, impartial review? Is there a process?
Can you
where
say
the
that
review
again?
is? How do you guarantee an impartial, independent review?
It's why we have the statewide approach. So we have multiple people that come onto that panel. And that's actually been a big improvement, right? Getting
Is
it
this
out of the
different than the pilot for the internal review process? I think
Yes.
it's been retitled the community review panel or something. Is
That's
this different than that?
This is different. This is not that review panel. This is
Okay.
just LD staff on this panel. And the difference of this is that we used to review this at basically the local level, the regional level. So it would go to the supervisor, then it would go to the RA for review, right? So it would get held up twice, basically. And now what it does is it goes to the supervisor. If there's a mistake that's made, we can fix that really quick, right? Because we just want the low hanging fruit we want to take care of. Now when it goes to that statewide, the other thing that it does is it really helps us with training, right? So if we're catching mistakes of interpretation of WACs at that level, then it's getting turned around and going out to the entire state. Like, hey, here's a reminder. We did a review. This is what came up, that kind of stuff.
So it's being reviewed ultimately by somebody that's not directly the supervisor for whoever wrote it up, the license.
And if the supervisor is on, say it's out of Tacoma, right? And that Tacoma supervisor is sitting on that review panel right now, they'll step out of that review, right? So that then everybody else is looking at it. It didn't used to be I mean, if folks remember back in the day, it didn't used to be that way. It really didn't feel like a review. Now I think that we're doing a better job of it.
That's good to hear, actually.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Travis, when
Okay.
I just had my monitoring visit, the bark issue came up and that we're supposed to have 9 inches everywhere, no matter the age group or how high the play item is. And so I had bark blown in within 3 days of our monitoring visit. It was fixed, sent pictures. And then our licensor came back out, measured it, which was fine. It was 9 inches. She goes, well, actually it needs to be 11 inches. So it doesn't get, smushed down when they come down the slide or, jump down and it compacts. So then apparently there was an email that went out about the bark, but it's not in the WAC 11 inches. I kept it at 9 inches like the WAC says. And then the other licensor that I was in process with opening my new center was like, oh yeah, I saw that email. That was you. And I said, well, that was my center. And I was pushing back because 11 inches, that's a lot more bark if you have 4 playgrounds like I do. And she's like, oh yeah, that was you. They said that you were making a nuisance again. So, which, I do make a nuisance because I push back. I ask questions. I bring up ideas.
That's not a nuisance.
Something like
That's not a nuisance.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be said.
But I'm still last month still being said in the licensing office that I'm hard to deal with, which I feel is not right still at supervisor level. But like something like that where 9 inches is a WAC, but then 11 inches, nope, because you need it for compaction. I said no.
Katie, were you cited for the 11 inches?
I was cited for not having 9 inches at that exact moment under a slide because there was so much bark, but it gets moved around and just wasn't raked, which we could have fixed in that moment because we had plenty of bark.
Yeah.
But no, I wasn't cited for the 11 inches. she just came back and measured it and said, well, I want 11 inches. And I said, no, I'm not doing 11 inches. Do you want to pay my $2,900 bark blowing bill again? No. So, but then to hear that I am hard to deal with because I push back, it's just, again, this is the retaliation. I just opened 10 new centers yesterday. They're
Katie.
open.
I will be following up with that and circling back with you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
That's not okay.
I appreciate that.
Sorry that happened.
So Travis, Gloria had put a fairly lengthy comment in here, if
Yeah.
you want to read it over. Part of it for me sounds like, oh, what was that program called? Where two licensors, they went out to see if they came to the same conclusions. But yeah, if you could just read that over. But licensors coming up with different points of view.
Yeah, it's frankly, it's a training issue for us is what it is. Now I think we're getting better, right? We're there for a while. We had a lot of new licensors and but we've done a ton of training and I think we're getting better. Like I said, we're gonna pull some data here at the end of the year and look at it and see where we've been consistent, where we've been inconsistent, and start addressing some of those areas. We're also going to look at some wax and that kind of stuff. So I would love to share that. You know, it's still if we have kind of these rogue licensors out there, I need to hear what's going on so we can address it. You know.
Well, and I think your survey, when the survey, I think you're coming back in August to talk about the survey that a provider would fill out following a monitoring visit. I think that will help if that data is being used to then identify, as you say, rogue licensors.
Yeah. I would also say Wenatchee's a little bit of a different case with that community is they don't have a supervisor right now. We're in the process of hiring one, so that will help. I believe we've had supervisors out of the area covering for a while, so it's made it difficult. It's been difficult on providers. It's been difficult on licensors as well. So.
Okay, Jen had an interesting idea. Why not set up childcare check like the Better Business Bureau? At least I can respond to things.
I saw that. Yeah, you know, honestly, I need to go in and look at the Better Business Bureau and what that looks like. And kind of see the compare, but I'll go in and look. Yeah, we can get some ideas.
Okay, Gloria asked how long. I'm just gonna assume she's saying how long does an appeal take?
Well, the super review could possibly take, well, you have the 10 days review. Then you get a couple days in between, right? In case then you have to get another 10 days. So at a minimum, you're looking at 20 days, and then it goes to that final review they have. I don't know how much time that review panel has. There is a certain amount of times that they have to get together. I want to say it's 30 total for that group to get together, but that might be a little bit high. So it could take 50 to, I would say, 60 days just with the timetables that we have in place right now. So if you start extending those 10-day periods at the front, it could push it out a long time is the other thing. So I hope that answered the question. It's roughly a 50 to 60-day process if you go all the way through.
Okay. Eva said maybe giving providers the option to choose what they want to use their first time forgiveness on. Just a thought. My understanding was first time forgiveness can be used over and over and over if it's on different things.
Yes. So it's not like it would be first time forgiveness. You can use it for that whack. So each whack that you're cited for, you get if it's not an immediate or a high risk is what it is.
Okay.
Those are the only ones that you don't get first time forgiveness.
Okay, and Dee said licensor needs to be a consultant to help us interpret the WACs for how we manage programs. Maybe that was in reference to a conversation that she had with you. Okay, let's see.
Excuse me. Yeah, I was just confirming to Travis, yes, this separation of a complaint unit hopefully will relieve some of the pressure with licensors. But I want to mention another thing on this first time forgiveness thing. When a licensor takes one thing, like for us, we have a child who sometimes has an asthma thing with her, and when parents send it and want us to do it, that's when we do it. But she didn't read the medical form that way. She read the form that we always give it to the child. But we have an understanding from when we got all this documentation from the parents that it's as asthma is, sometimes it's a seasonal thing, it's different times. So she cited us on I think 4 different WACs for this because we needed to get a new form that said that. So in a way, that's like first time on 4 WACs for one thing.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's a little weird.
That is. Yep. I hear you.
Yeah, I can relate to that one.
Right? A specific citing, one thing, answer it.
Yep.
Answer it 4 times. Why?
Yeah, I wouldn't classify that as weird because that's happening all the time. And I know that we've talked in this group about that getting fixed in the future of when there's something that's being cited that right now what happens is that on the form, it gets cited in every single WAC. The same thing gets cited in every single WAC that it could possibly be related to rather than just being cited in the one WAC. That's a common occurrence.
So it's like we'll throw the kitchen sink and see which one sticks.
Yeah, so let's say that you have a staff that didn't have bloodborne pathogens. That'll get cited 3 to 4 to 5 times in all of the different spots in which there's a WAC that has to do with any training. So instead of it just being on the sheet once, it's on the sheet 4 or 5 times. And I know we've talked about that in this group, and I thought that we were getting to a pathway of fixing that, but that's a pretty common occurrence.
It's a training issue is what it is. And so well, I'll circle back and readdress it again.
Okay, Travis, you just said the phrase that is in the next chat comment from Jen. Well, I appreciate the statement that it's a training issue. That training issue gets put on our record. So, I mean, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of it is that's why you have the dispute process. So if we screwed up and we made a mistake, it's gonna come off, right? And I know that the dispute process, sometimes you just don't want to do it, right? Like you've got other stuff to do. And so, yeah, unfortunately it's a training issue and we got to get better at our job is what it is. And I frankly need you all to kind of tell us, hey, we're not doing our job so that we can do it better and have that open conversation and being able to, have some conversations and bring stuff to my attention and Debbie Groff's attention and AA so that we can address that stuff and get better.
This brings me back to the monitoring survey that you're going to come talk with us about in August. Will there be an opportunity for us to collaborate and insert things into the survey that we think are important?
Yeah. I think so. I think that survey is gonna help. I really do.
All right. Gloria said, can we have a bilingual supervisor for Wenatchee? Is it necessary, Chelan?
We're trying.
Okay. Is it necessary? Chelan and Douglas counties are a lot of Spanish-speaking providers. It's hard to communicate with a monolingual supervisor. So that's good to hear you're working on that.
Yep.
Rachel said the supervisor review results came back in a week. The panel review came back an hour later. In my case, last year. No one asked why in the 9 years we've been open that I would submit my first dispute, nor did they allow me to speak on my behalf as I requested. I'm glad that these issues are finally being addressed.
Okay.
Okay. Oh my gosh, we got through it. That's all the chat right now.
Thank-
Okay.
I just want to say thank you all for the healthy conversation. I'm open to the feedback, and I know that we have areas to improve on. And we'll keep coming to have the conversation.
Honestly, I thought that part of this conversation was going to be, so I'm confused about the different ways to dispute or appeal or what have you, because I thought that it might include a discussion around that internal review.
That's a whole separate conversation, Julie. Now
Okay.
we can have that conversation. It is just very, very difficult to get anything to that committee right now, because the way that it was written, that what it has to be is it has to be something that is on a FLICA in lieu of licensing action. So that means that we're either suspending, revoking, denying, and if we're doing a FLICA in lieu of that, a lot of times you, like 99.9% of the time, you all are saying, yeah, I'll do this on the FLICA, leave my doors open so that I can keep, like, we're coming to the table to talk there. And in that case, they're not going to ask for a review. We just need to fix that. So that things will go to that committee to be able to look at. So it's in the hopper to fix.
So that committee was, I mean, the great thing about that committee was that it was going to have providers that would look over
Yes.
the whatever and help. So I'm wondering, you're talking about an appeal process that starts at the regional level and then it goes to the state, and the regional administrators for my region would not be part of the statewide. So why not maybe find some providers that are interested in participating in that? So there's a provider perspective when someone is appealing or disputing something.
That group meets at least monthly, if not twice a month, depending on what we have coming in reviews. Like, because there's a lot of reviews, right? If you think statewide, right? So that would mean that we would need providers to show up twice a month, for 2 hours to discuss soup reviews it's quite a commitment, Julie.
Would it have to be the same providers every time though? Because you've got a group of providers here, and if it was able to rotate and say, well, Dave's available next month, he can do the first one, and Sandra's available and she wants to do the one the following time, would that not work?
I'm willing to talk about it.
Okay. I mean, I think we should bring this back then and talk about it, because that's the part where providers feel like their voice is missing, and maybe they're getting screwed because DCYF is going to side with DCYF. That's the sentiment out there. So if they feel like, well, it was heard by my fellow providers as well, and unfortunately, they thought that I should have done a better job or whatever, I can accept the results easier than if it's just DCYF against little old me, right?
Yeah. And we're in a secret room somewhere in a government building having this meeting kind of thing. Like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. More and more I'm getting open to the idea of providers coming to that and listening what's being said, right?
Yeah, we want transparency and collaboration and to be a part of, and yet, yes, we're busy and we can't commit to every single one of them. But if you sent CE a list of dates and said, do you have any providers that would be willing to spend 2 hours on this meeting? I would bet that you'd have some hands come up.
Yeah. Okay.
And a rotating group might actually be really good, because then you're getting opinions from multiple different people and not just the same group of people over and over and over again.
Yeah. When we did that pilot with providers, and we went through a bunch of reviews.
I remember you said the providers were harder
Providers
on.
hammered providers. Like licensors were in the room going, we can give them another chance. So, yeah. All right, I'm open to it.
Okay. I think it'd be a good, good to revisit that specific topic at a future meeting.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Definitely.
Looks like we're gonna put you on the calendar for a bunch of stuff upcoming then.
Sounds wonderful.
Okay. All right. Do we have any last questions for Travis? Travis, do you have anything? Because we're gonna be going to break at 11:15, so we've got a little bit of time here.
I don't have anything. I appreciate the feedback that everybody shared, and I hear what you're saying. So,
And Travis, are you going to be at the forum tonight?
yes, I will be at the forum tonight.
All right. Anybody in Wenatchee wants to see Travis live and in person?
Live and in person.
Yeah. No cover charge. Yeah, but he'll be at the first community childcare forum this evening in Wenatchee.
Well, and then there's that other meeting tonight. The WAC update webinar, right?
There's a rulemaking public session tonight. Yes.
At 4. So we can do both. Okay, let's see. So, okay, Katie said it was productive. Gloria said, we are able to support this review, but we like to have a paid substitute cover our space in the daycare. Okay. And yeah, that looks like about it.
There is a question in Spanish in the chat, and it says Thelma is asking, it sounds like she's a home provider. She had an instance where she didn't have children under her care, and the licensor during a visit cited some different things around the house. It sounds like where she puts her dog when children are not in the care, and then like not properly noting an expiration date on an onion in the fridge. So she just wants to understand better why the licensor noted all these things when there was no children under her care at that time.
I'm wondering was there an agreement to do a monitor visit without kids? Or a visit without kids?
Does the provider have the ability to say, I'm closed today? We'll have to have this another time?
Yes, if there's no kids in care.
That's good to know.
But I mean, you could also say, I don't have kids in care. We can do the visit without kids and then come back later and see kid interaction and that stuff. So that could be a possibility.
I mean, an onion without an expiration date, that seems pretty weird.
That seems like yeah.
Marlene and Aaron, I'm not sure how these comments that are non-English are usually handled. I thought translation was, can you explain that?
Yeah, so basically the Spanish speakers are in a channel, so we have the interpreters interpreting everything we're talking about right now to them, so they can hear everything, but they can't ask questions to the interpreter. The interpreter is only there to convey the information to them. So they're putting these questions in the chat, hoping to get DCYF to answer them, and the interpreters do not read them, so I'm reading them for them. So Travis and Julie, you just answered the question and asked more questions around the scenario, and I'm hoping the interpreter did interpret that. So I don't know what Benma will have to say about that.
Does the interpreter not have the ability to see the chat?
The interpreter is only here to interpret, and they do not review the chat.
Oh. Okay, well, I guess maybe the providers just need to be told that.
Gloria put in the chat that the licensor insisted. So what I would contact the supervisor is what I would do. And she's saying it happens a lot in Central and Eastern, so maybe we'll get to address that this evening when we have some providers there.
Okay. Okay, well, it looks like we're out of questions and comments, so we are going to take a break, and we will come back from break at 11:30. And the topic will be on licensing WAC revisions, which is also the discussion at 4 online. So we'll see you at 11:30. Thanks for being here, Travis. Are you sticking around?
Yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit, and I gotta get on the road. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, everybody. It is 11:30, so we're gonna get going again. One thing, there was a mentee from that last presentation with Travis that I think we can maybe put back into the chat if people didn't have the opportunity to be able to grab that. And then we are going to move now to hearing from Ann Ratcliffe and Brett Skinner. Brett is DCYF's Child Care Policy and Change Management Specialist, and Ann is the Change Management Program Supervisor, and they are going to gather feedback on upcoming early learning licensing WAC revisions. And as we were doing before, if you can put your questions and comments in the chat when there's some natural breaks, we will go through and get those answered. And then at the end, there'll be another mentee reflection time as well, survey for this presentation as well. So Ann and Brett, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to your presentation. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Dave. As you mentioned, I am Ann Radcliffe, the Licensing Division Policy Program Supervisor, and my expert along with me today is Brett Skinner. You want to introduce yourself, Brett?
Yeah, hi everybody, Brett Skinner. And like Ann said, do a lot of childcare policy and procedure, and have been doing change management as well.
So what we'd like to do today is let you all know that there are some couple of WACs that are on board for change right now, and we're looking for your input. We respectfully request your ideas and your recommendations. We'll talk a little bit about the process of changing the rules, and then we'll talk about the next steps after today. So I think Brett is going to talk a little bit about the three main categories.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some WACs that are changing, and basically what we're doing is trying to make sure that people can provide input on these, and can bring suggestions, or they can look at the WAC language and provide that feedback. So some of these impact different groups, and so we'll kind of walk through who they impact, kind of why they came about. So just from a broad overview, the numbers can be a little, like glaze the eyes a little bit, but the first bullet is impacting first aid and CPR. And what it's doing is it's basically allowing first aid and CPR to have a little longer grace period when you're first hiring. And there are some caveats to that. Basically, you need to have someone else that is qualified in first aid CPR that can be there, that can administer that if they need to. So you need to have someone that's there. And this came about through a petition. We have a petition process, so anyone can submit a petition to provide feedback for a change. And basically this was looked at, and it seemed like a good idea to line up with some other areas or other qualifications that we have for new hires. So it made sense. So those changes are there. The second one is 0358. And this one is only impacting family home child cares. And this one came about, it's kind of had a long journey, let's say, but it impacts the capacity requirements. So if people remember, during COVID, to try to expand capacity, the legislature wanted us to put in an ability to get a waiver to go beyond 12 total children in a family home setting, because 12 had kind of been that number for forever. And so this waiver was put through, and then as time progressed, as we came out of COVID, a lot of concerns were kind of coming up through a variety of ways. And then fire code and residential building code were also getting involved in talking about it. So basically they have made some updates, and that is really forcing the hand of making changes to our WACs to align with that, so that that it's all legal. So we'll kind of get into what that means, but it's a pretty significant change for anyone that currently has that waiver beyond 12 children or would want to request that. And then the last one is kind of impacting family homes, centers, our outdoor nature-based and our school-age programs. And this one is around our discipline and guidance, and it is changing the language a tiny bit to try to make sure that we're capturing some of these violations that occur where basically we're not having a way to track it, or it's a little bit vague the way that the WAC was written. So that we want to make sure if these things are happening, pretty serious things are happening, that we are tracking that and we're having conversations, maybe updating our training. So that's kind of what the change is there. If you want to go to the next slide. So again, here you can actually see what the specific change is for the first aid CPR. And so it kind of has pieces that are crossed out. And then it has highlighted. And here it's basically saying it used to say 4 through like 9, and then we're adding the first aid CPR onto that list so that you can get it within 3 months of the date of hire and prior to working in unsupervised capacity with children. So providing that caveat that you do need to have somebody that has that first aid CPR that's going to be present that can perform those duties. So that's the first part of it. And if you want to go to the second or to the next page, it does also add a couple of little elements. So here's in red, it says at least one early learning provider counted in staff to child ratio for each group of children must have a current first aid and CPR certificate. And then this other piece, and I'll kind of read it. It says, the first aid and CPR training and certification must include a live hands-on component for first aid and CPR demonstrated in front of an instructor, either in person or remotely, who is certified by the American Red Cross, American Heart Association, Health and Safety Institute, or other nationally recognized certification program. So that again is to kind of update things, give people more of a virtual option, recognize that that is something that we can do in this day and age. And so we wanted to make sure that that was included as well. So I think that is all on that WAC. So I kind of wanted to pause for a second to see if anybody had thoughts, questions, things they wanted to raise about this WAC specifically.
There's nothing in the chat. I don't see any hand raises at this point. So.
Okay.
I think we are okay to keep moving forward. And then if someone has something that comes to mind, then we can circle back to it if that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
And are you doing the capacity waiver, or am I doing this one?
Yes, I do see a couple of questions in the chat. Are we going to wait a bit, Dave, with those?
Just to clarify, yeah, live CPR includes on Zoom.
Yes, it could be. What we added with that wording, either in person or remotely, understanding that it could be demonstrated via Zoom or.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Marlene on the 2 questions and here we go. The bloodborne pathogens training should be done every year. I believe that's correct. I think always the challenge on that one is that Merit doesn't recognize that. So there's no, when you actually put in your bloodborne pathogens training into merit, it doesn't show an expiration date. And so people think that it's evergreen and you don't have to redo it. So I know that it's been an ongoing challenge, and not sure if that's something that's being fixed or if it's something that is it just is. So I don't know if anyone else may have that answer, but I know that one comes up often because there's no indication in merit that it is due again after the year.
Right. That's a good one for us to put on our list to check back with you all.
Okay.
I know that it has been brought to our attention, and we could certainly review that with Debbie and Travis.
Perfect.
And if you
And
want,
then
if you want to
go ahead.
suggest
Sorry,
wording,
Ann.
if any of you want to suggest some wording on how to make that more clear, please feel free.
Well, I think it's just the same as CPR. So it seems like it's more of a technical issue than anything else. But when you enter your CPR date, there's another box that pops up that shows automatically what your renew date would be. And when you plug in your date for bloodborne pathogens, that same thing doesn't happen.
And you're talking merit, right?
Correct. And the reason that it seems confusing is that in merit, it never gives you an expiration date. And so in merit, people never show that they're out of compliance because it never pops up as red, because there isn't an expiration date that's included. And so what happens is that you kind of forget about it. And then when a licensor comes to do their monitoring visit and then looks at the file, they see that the bloodborne pathogens is out of date because it was more than a year old. So, and then the conversation goes back and forth about, well, there isn't anything in merit that's telling me that I need to do it again. So it's been kind of an ongoing, that one's been going for a while. So I just didn't know kind of where it was at in its solution. So
I'm making a note on that, and we will get back to you on that.
Cool. And then a couple other ones. Where can we obtain these trainings like CPR and first aid? Do you guys have a kind of a list or some ideas for folks?
So they're noted here in they need to be certified by American Red Cross, American Heart Association, Health and Safety Institute, or other nationally recognized certification programs. I don't know locally where everyone is located and where you can find those, but they do need to be certified. I also see a hand up.
Yeah, let me go there in just a second. Let's finish the catch up in the chat here quick. Is wilderness first aid training allowed to be taken online? Sorry, I did not hear that part.
No.
This is an outdoor nature requirement.
Right. And the decision was made, and I see Travis is on here. The decision was made not to include outdoor nature-based 302 chapter with this because of the immediate nature of having to have those childcare early learning providers right there with those kiddos. It is included in the 300 chapter and the 301. So the remote option is not there for the 302. Travis, if you want to weigh in.
Yes, Ann, that's correct. You're you're exactly right. Dave, what's your question on it?
What's that?
What's your question on it?
I don't know that I have a question. I was just reading the ones in the chat.
Okay.
There was a question in the chat that asked about is wilderness first aid training allowed to be taken online?
I think what that had to do with, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm off base, but it had to do with if folks were in person actually getting the training, or if the trainer was online, like on the screen or something. Didn't it have to do with something like that? Or am I completely off base?
I'd have to review my notes on it. All I know is the decision was not to include outdoor nature-based.
Yeah. I can follow up with Debbie Groff and circle back on it.
All right, thanks, Travis. And then we had another question in the chat. And Gloria, maybe, I don't know if you want to unmute as well, just to be able to ask. I just want to make sure that I'm asking this the way that you're hoping. It's just, we're able to support, but we like to have paid substitutes to cover our space in childcare. And then Janelle followed up with can we get extra sub-pool hours assigned? So I'm wondering if that has to do with getting subs during the time that people are taking these trainings. Gloria and Janelle, is that what you guys are referring to? Not sure.
Well,
Okay.
I was gonna let Gloria go first because she started that conversation,
Oh,
but
okay.
for whatever, really, I would love to have it for even this time that we're in these meetings, or other committees that we're on for DCYF. It would be really neat to have someone else pay for the help, you know what I mean?
Okay. Thanks, Janelle.
Yeah.
And then just one more note, and I don't know that this is, I think, more of a how bloodborne pathogens works, but a request to be able to have it be every 2 years instead of every 1 year. But I'm not sure that that's something that we can change. So. Okay, I think we got through the questions that are in the chat for now, so I'll throw it back to you guys and then we can catch up again after the next section, if that works.
Oh, I think there was one more about the pathogens training. Why does it show NA in merit?
Oh, sorry, that's what we had mentioned that before. That's what they're looking at she had written that down.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, it was
The
further
NA
back.
is referred to, it doesn't have an expiration date in it, so it can get confusing about the fact that you actually do have to refresh it every year. All right, Ann and Brett, back to you.
Okay, thank you. I will now kind of dive into this 0358. This WAC change affects family home providers only. So it is, as you know, the 0358 is the capacity waiver for family home providers section. This rule needs revision due to changes in the residential building code, as Brett mentioned a little earlier. This code went into effect on March 15th, 2024. And the biggest change is that waivers for more than 12 children in a family home will no longer be allowed for any capacity over 16 in care. There are a couple of other changes, and you have the attachment, I believe, for this WAC change that kind of shows everything that's been changed. In subsection 5, that the licensee must provide documentation to DCYF from the city or the county they live in that their program space and structures meet local building codes. We're working on putting together a family home capacity waiver inspection checklist that meets all of those building code rules. There are a few smaller revisions to this rule, and rather than put them all on the slide today, I would just direct you to the most recent draft that you received attached to this meeting invitation. You'll see that fourth bold bullet. There's an emergency preparedness plan. Part of the emergency preparedness plan now requires emergency lighting for interior stairs. When the power goes out, those lights will come on automatically. And then kitchens must have at least one fire extinguisher and a heat detector. That is a new part of the state building code. If you would like to look at the full draft and the differences between the current 0358 and the ones that we are suggesting, the link at the bottom of the slide there in the bottom right-hand corner will take you to the current version of 0358. So a pause for questions on 0358. Were there some in the chat there, Dave?
Nothing in the chat right now. Janelle has her hand up, so let's go to her first.
Okay, Janelle.
Okay, first I'm going to lower my hand so that goes away. I always forget to do that. Just a quick question, and maybe this is just an interpretation on that additional requirement part about the emergency lighting on the stairs that automatically turns on when the power goes out. Now, I'm not an electrician, so I don't know how this is going to work. Question is, if we have some kind of battery operated light that comes on literally anytime the stairs are dark, whether the power's on or not. Is that good enough? Or does it literally have to be hardwired in somehow, some switch that when the house is not powered, the lights are on?
It's a really good question. Brett, do you know?
Well, I think the context that I want to provide, like, one, it's a fantastic question. There is work, there's work actively being done and that needs to be worked on as this WAC is completed, and we kind of connect with the community around how we can support people, how we can make people aware of this, what it looks like to get approved, and how we can come together on making sure these things sort of make sense, like with the requirements, because it's kind of like new for us as well. So I want to just like kind of put that out there, that these are the types of things that I think that we need to have conversations around. So what I was going to say is, I haven't been in all the conversations with the building code and the fire code. Karen Christensen's been doing a lot of work meeting with them, and she isn't on here today, but we can definitely take that question down. And I want to just let you know that there's going to be a lot more communication coming forward to help align people. You know, and to just acknowledge this is a significant change, and just to understand that it's hard. We understand that it's hard for folks that have this waiver in place or want this waiver, trying to work through that. And I just want to acknowledge that it's not fun for anyone to have to kind of work through this transition, or to make people pay to do some of these things. So I just wanted to say that. And we can take this question down and get back to you, Janelle.
Absolutely. I would appreciate that, because there's literally a $20 fix on Amazon for what I'm talking about. These little battery operated LED lights that come on when there's any kind of motion that can illuminate stairs. But what it sounds like you're saying in this WAC proposal is that it's something more, and it's going to require an electrician and a permit and a lot of money to make it happen.
We can
So I
definitely
appreciate you looking into it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Janelle. Any other questions on this one? I don't have anything in the chat, Ann and Brett. Can I circle back one more time? I think I made an assumption that I probably shouldn't have been so quick to, but on the bloodborne pathogens, right now it's a year expiration. There were some requests in the chat to be able to see if that's something that we could look at to extend to a 2-year expiration. My assumption was that that was just industry standard and we didn't have the ability to be able to make that adjustment, but I guess I'd put that back to you guys to be able to see if that's something that we might be able to investigate.
We can definitely put it on our list to check into, and I'll
Okay.
have Travis and Debbie for sure get back to you.
All right, excellent. I appreciate it. Any other questions on this one before we have them move forward? And thank you, Janelle, for your thoughtful question there. Sandra has her hand up, so let's go over to her.
Good morning, everyone. Just a question, understanding that this is building changes. Do the current family home providers have a grandfather clause in this? Or do they have a period of time to meet these new requirements?
I'm glad you asked that, Sandra. And it's my understanding, and I'll have Travis hop on here again, but it's my understanding that Debbie Groff has already reached out to those who currently hold a capacity waiver to let them know this is coming, and that we definitely want to work with you all to give you some time before this goes into effect. Travis, you have anything to say on that?
So there's not a per se grandfathering, but we are giving folks time to come into compliance with this. And we've reached out to folks that have these in place. So we're trying to do some things ahead of schedule. But we know that this is going to change some business models. And so we're trying to work with folks of how to make that happen. So some folks are, deciding, that they're going to do something else to their facility and make the changes so that they can keep the level of capacity that they have. And others are, taking the time to, let kids transition out of their program. So yes, we know that this is a heartache, and so we're trying to work with folks, but there's not a per se like grandfathering in. We have to fix this and then move forward.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry, Brett.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, like Travis said, they're trying to create that awareness because some people had a capacity waiver much beyond 16, right? So if you had a capacity waiver for say like 22 children, you would at the very least you need to get it down to 16 if you could still meet these requirements. So some people are working to try to see if they'll be able to meet these requirements. But there are some circumstances where people might need to put in sprinklers. And there's some varying codes and different things that are kind of like happening with that on a case by case basis based on where you live. And that can be pretty prohibitive. Some people have, or may already have that in there. But that's a part of what the conversation is. But I think that there was like, I don't think there's anything like set in stone, but definitely, I've kind of heard like trying to work with people maybe, until like January, trying to figure it out. I don't know if that's like it's not like a firm date, but it is trying to work with people, like Travis said, reaching out to people who already have them to try to make the transition as smooth as possible.
All right. Looks like no more questions in the chat for this one for the moment. Julie has her hand up.
Nope, sorry, it's not for this one.
Oh, you want it? Is it for the going forward or going back?
Going forward.
Okay. Let's carry on then, Brett and Ann, if that works.
Yes, please. Next slide. This is the third group of WACs that are changing, and this 0331 subsection does affect all three chapters: family home centers, school age, and outdoor nature-based. 0331 subsection is titled Prohibited Behavior, Discipline, and Physical Removal of Children. What you see on the slide here right now, we've kind of highlighted the section of this WAC that has been a sticking point. And the section that was in a problem was this: must take steps to prevent and once aware of must not tolerate. The problem being is that the way this WAC is worded, it never actually says childcare providers may not use these methods. And so we want it to be very specific, and understanding that everyone on this call wants to protect children, wants them to be safe and healthy in your care. The wording was just too ambiguous. And what we're finding out is that it was more reactive rather than proactive with safety for children. So if you look to the next slide, you'll see our suggested rewording. It's in red. An early learning provider, staff member, or household member is prohibited from using the following behaviors and discipline of children. Much more specific about you can't use these methods. The reason the second part of that first one is lined out is because we still do have our WAC 0475, duty to protect children and report incidents. So if you say it's a center director, finds out that a teacher has been using any of these negative prohibited behaviors, that they will report it. And so that part is now omitted. We don't need it anymore. I see there's some hands and some comments, and we're going to get to them. Another important thing that we added to the draft is we added sexual abuse with definitions from RCW 26.44.030 and .020. This had not previously been mentioned in the WAC section, and so it was called out by some providers and from our licensors that we need to add in sexual abuse. The
Let's
rest
go to oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, no, were you done?
I was just going to say the rest of the rule is very much the same. You can, again, look at the preliminary drafts that we attached to the invite, and it's just a matter of renumbering, relettering.
That's great. Let's go to Susan, has her hand up. And then we do have, just as a reminder, we have a question from the previous one to go back to as well. So Susan, you want to go?
Sure. One of the concerns I have about this is the fact that we as providers often experience this kind of behavior from parents. It's not usually the staff in the center or and so if you're going to regulate this and make it a WAC, why it feels odd that you would exclude where a lot of the risk is, at least from the stories I hear, is from actual parents in centers. So how would you incorporate that or address that in a WAC like this when you're assuming that it's going to happen from just the providers and that are providing the care for children, when staff are sometimes at risk for harm from families that are enrolled?
I hear you. That is a really big concern. And I want to say that the 0475, which I'll copy and put into the chat here, that's where that would come in. If you as a provider see that there are alarming behaviors that are and prohibited discipline that is listed here, quite a long list, that you would then call that in. Because you as mandated reporters can call it in on the parents as well.
Julie, I know you put your hand down, but did you still want to follow up on this one? Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, I was just glad that it is specific to adult behavior. The previous one was vague, and it could be that a child, maybe a licensor comes in and sees a child do something that would fall under this WAC, and we could potentially be written up. So it's good that they specified this is about adults' behavior.
Yes, Julie, thanks for saying that. And further down in 0331, it does still address what happens if there's a child who's aggressive and needs to be removed. And starting with number 3, that the early learning provider may separate that child, it's preschool child or a school-age child, and there are steps on how to safely remove that child who's hurting other children.
I'm going to go back just to the previous one real quick. There was one question that came through after we moved on.
Yeah.
Are areas that are unlicensed, do they need to be secured even if children don't have access to those areas?
Is this in regards to the 0358 with the new capacity waiver?
I believe so, yes.
Hmm.
It came through as a translation, so just want to make sure that I'm getting it correct. But are the areas that are unlicensed, should they be secured even if children don't have access to those areas? And I think that's
Well,
I can jump in real quick.
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, Travis.
It depends on what's in that unlicensed space, right? So a lot of times you can just say, okay, there's a door, it's closed. That's unlicensed space, right? And you can supervise, right? By, hey, we're not going in there. Now, if you're not able to supervise, right? Then, and depending on what's back there, right? Like if could be dangerous for kids, then it would need to be secured. So it kind of depends on what's behind there. When we're talking about a family home, it gets even more complicated, because then you bring in like, it's their house, their area, and they can also, like, if there are guns involved, or the medication, different things like that, then it does need to be secured. So it's kind of yes, and there are cases where if it's, you know, doesn't need, you can do it by supervision, right? By just telling kids not to go in there. So hope I answered that.
All right. Any other questions about these?
I just kind of going back, I think, to Susan, she was making a comment about that maybe the household member is prohibited from using the following behaviors and discipline of children. I think the intent with that language is for like a family home when they have a household member that's kind of living in the home. And if one of the household members were to participate in one of these disciplinary guidances that are not allowed, then that would be the specific place where this WAC would come into play. Whereas if you have a parent of a child that's like picking up or dropping off, and they are participating in something like this, that's where Anne was bringing up the potential child abuse or neglect, some of the reporting guidelines, or you might have your own policies and procedures around expected behavior from a parent where you might not have the child in there.
Yeah, and she said, I understand that about the family home. I meant the family of children exhibiting prohibited behavior toward childcare staff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, totally. Thanks, Susan.
And then when would these updated regulations be effective?
So that is a good question. The process for rulemaking takes a while. If you can go to the next slide, I can kind of explain a little bit about the timeline.
Yeah, and sorry, I may have jumped ahead a little bit. Maybe let's see if Julie's question was related to that last one, and then maybe this one can kind of fit. Then we can move on to that bit.
Mine's related to the wax and the petition.
Okay, should we do that later?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so this slide kind of outlines how the rulemaking process goes. CR stands for Code Reviser. The CR 101 Notice of Intent is just a very basic notification to providers, the public. We're thinking about changing this rule. Here's why. And that CR 101 Notice of Intent has already been filed. Right now, we're in the process of letting folks know. We've been presenting to tribes and to other stakeholders, as well as partners, as well as you all, to let you know what's coming up, to give you a voice. Like, are you okay with this wording? What would you recommend? And then once we get the exact wording that is settled on, we would file the Code Reviser's document 102, the rulemaking notice, to say, here's the language we're going with. That would be after all the public comment, all the input is received and followed up on. And then finally, the Code Reviser's document 103P, P stands for permanent. That would be to say, here's our wording, and it's going to be in effect this date. So all along this process, you have time to give input, and we encourage you to give us your thoughts and your concerns. At the very bottom of the slide, there's a link that you can click on that takes you right to the rulemaking page where you can submit your comments, and you can subscribe to receive notice anytime any rule is being changed. So that, I think that's what that link takes you to. It takes you to the subscription page where you will be notified anytime there's a change in the rule.
Excellent, thanks. Let's hop back to Julie now.
Sure.
Okay, so you guys mentioned the petition process. And we heard at a meeting a while back that there's a long list of WACs that were found to be problematic after they were instituted in 2019. You know, like maybe the broom thing. Once it has been around for a while, there's been so many complaints about it. Maybe that's one of the ones that made the list of things to be considered for amendments. So I'm wondering if that list can be shared. I have filed petitions in the past, and I don't really want to spend time on petitions if it's a WAC that's already being considered for amendment.
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Which one were you referring to?
The petition to amend a WAC.
Oh, yes, but I thought I heard you.
That's something that takes time and effort, right? And yet I know that it was shared with this group at one time that there is now a list of WACs that DCYF has recognized as being a little problematic, and they're going to work on amending them. So can that list be made public?
Well, what we're doing right now is focusing on this group of 3. And we actually do have in mind some that have been brought to our attention, both from providers and from licensing staff. A number of them that are related to health and safety that we're going to be looking at very soon. If you have them and you have specific petitions, I mean, petition process does work. In fact, Julie,
no,
was
I
it
know. I mean, like I
You
said, I
submitted
have
one.
filed petitions before. I did the one on CPR. If something's already being considered for amendment, then it seems kind of a waste of providers' time to do a petition if it's already going to be considered. So if there's a list of rules that are being considered for changing or amending, is that not something that can be shared publicly?
Travis?
Yeah, well, I'll wait for Travis, but Julie, I totally get what you're saying. And I totally am on board with let's not waste your time. Like if we have these items, that makes complete sense to me. And I do think we just need to make sure that we're, there's just different random things. You don't want to like create these unintended consequences by like sort of saying certain things. There's a bunch of processes, a bunch of logistics that we go through. So I don't want to like accidentally publish stuff, but there's got to be a way to make sure that we're communicating with you and we can be on the same page and not waste your time. So I don't know. Ruben just popped on, but if Travis is still there, you can kind of like weigh in as well.
I'll weigh in as well. Good afternoon, everyone. For those that are new, my name is Ruben Reyes. I'm Assistant Secretary for Licensing Division, and I just got to the Wenatchee office. I look forward to seeing some of you tonight. I did hear most of the meeting on my drive over here over the phone, other than probably about 45 minutes going over Blewett Path. So, Julie, as far as the WACs, let me be clear on this, okay? So the only WACs that we're considering revising, changing for this year are those that impact child safety, okay? Next year, we will be looking at all of the WACs in childcare. So we're kind of looking at the format of the WACs so it is consistent across the agency. So it's that time that we will be working with the providers and looking at changing some of our WACs, kind of a major overhaul, but that won't happen till next year. Brett, Ann, are there a list of WACs that we have right now that there's been requests for amendments that we're just kind of putting on hold until next year?
Yes. Yep.
So I think we could share that with this group, right? And, the ones that have been requested, we're not making the revisions right now, but we will consider and look at those kind of next year, if there's a list of WACs. Is that pretty much what you're asking, Julie?
Yeah, and I appreciate hearing what the timeline is on that. But yeah, I mean, using again the broom one as an example, I think there's been a lot of complaints about that one. I hope there's been a lot of public complaints, not just like social media complaints, but it just feels like something that would be kind of a waste of a provider's time to petition if it's already in work. So having it shared that which ones are going to be amended would be extremely helpful and transparent and collaborative and all that.
And Julie, there'll be more communication at the end of the year, beginning of next year, kind of like, okay, here's a list of wax revisions that have been requested that we'll kind of take a look at, and then also explain kind of the bigger story and bigger process that we're going to be looking at next year. But we're just focusing this next 5 or 6 months. We're just going to be focused on ones that impact child safety.
Okay.
So the next slide, just again, we would love to hear your input. If you have additional suggestions for specifically these 3 sections that we talked about today, or any at all, you can always get in touch with us, positive, negative, and you'll have many ways to give input: webinars, email, phone. If you subscribe to the rulemaking page, you can give comment anytime. And I see Susan's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Julie's comments about, so, I mean, just like the petition process, when the diaper changing table thing came to play and childcare providers gave immediate feedback that righted that ship that could have actually caused harm. I think it's important that we know what wax you're looking, especially for child safety, because we live and breathe that child safety thing every day. And it's important that we be part of the process of fixing child safety things because of our experience and based on our experience. So knowing what those child safety WACs are and having the opportunity to weigh in before things get too far down the track is really important. So I just wanted to add that to the mix of conversation that was happening about that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So if you have other WACs that are going to be up for revision this year, when would be a good time for you guys to come back to this committee to collaborate and get feedback?
Well, we are kind of getting that list together. We were asked to limit them to only those that are health and safety risks, either serious or immediate risks on your checklist. And there's a short list of them. I don't know how often this committee meets.
Every other month.
Okay. We could certainly come back the next time you meet and share that list with you.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Okay.
That would be fabulous. Thank you so much.
Ruben?
I just want to remind everyone, there are several emails that go out also to the provider community when we change wax. I mean, we're required to do that, right? And so it comes from either myself or it comes from our rules department. So the wax that Ann and Brett are going over, there has been some communication that has gone out before. So we won't revise wax or change wax without getting input from the childcare community and also from this group as well. So I just want to make sure that pretty clear on that. There's been several communication emails that have gone out on these wax.
We do. We get a lot of emails. And
yeah.
I do see the WAC revision emails, and typing something into a portal kind of like a black hole. You never know if somebody's reading it or getting it or what's happening with it. I appreciate that you guys are doing webinars on the WAC revisions. I know one of them's tonight, and then of course coming to provider supports. It can be really a nice way to clarify what your point is when you're a provider, and when it's sometimes harder to do it through a comment portal.
Understand.
Yeah, so I love that you guys are doing webinars on it. Thank you. All right, do we have other comments, questions?
Jacqueline had a question and I translated in the chat. I'm not sure if you guys got to it, and I apologize. I'm trying to translate the other one.
Okay.
So, Jacqueline, it can be really challenging when parents that are doing pickup or drop off are demonstrating behaviors that are inappropriate. And you know, that does happen where sometimes parents try to retaliate and call in complaints if you confront or you talk to them about that. What I've seen happen a lot is being really, really upfront with parents in your policies and procedures around what behaviors are healthy and what you are going to allow in front of the children, and kind of trying to write in what potential consequences will be if you're going to give them a verbal warning, and trying to address it from the very beginning, that if they're not willing to behave like that, you're going to have to, you know, bring their kid to them so that they're not doing those behaviors around the other children. And unfortunately, sometimes people don't respond well to that. So I would suggest putting in your policies and procedures, having everybody re-sign that, communicate with your licensor, let them know if you're having a challenge with a parent so that the licensor can note that. So if a complaint comes in, you're able to already have had that conversation with your licensor about that. But it is a challenge that continues to happen out with parents sometimes. So you just want to protect yourself. I would put it in your policies and communicate with your licensor, and that will be noted if they do call in a complaint.
Sometimes a parent's inappropriate behavior or language is a great training moment, and I send a message out to all families
I like
about
that.
what's acceptable at the center.
Paul. If you go to the next slide, whoever's operating the slides, you'll have our contact information, Brett and my emails, as well as the DCYF rules coordinator inbox, and they will definitely make sure that all feedback is considered and addressed.
And I also, Teresa wrote something that I think is really important. You know, Teresa, I'm sorry to hear that you're seeing some inconsistencies with licensing. And I would say I've been working in childcare for about 12 years, 12 years with the state. And that continues to be an important conversation that we're having around the state on how to create consistency with how we view and interpret a rule. We have multiple work groups that are looking at inconsistencies, looking when providers question something so that we can try to find a consistent answer and then spread that communication and spread that training out around the state. But what I would say is it's not perfect, and we're trying to grow, and we're trying to do well, and we're constantly trying to make sure that our staff get on the same page and that we learn. So I appreciate you communicating that and continue to communicate that when you have challenges so that we can do better. And Travis, I don't know if you're on, if you want to say anything to that as well, or Ruben.
Yeah, I think Travis is actually on the road headed to Wenatchee now too. So Brett, I agree. And, you know, we've talked about this actually today, you know, about being consistent, how we interpret our rules, and we have things in process, but like I said, we can definitely improve on as well. So.
Well, we definitely appreciate your time and consideration. And as I mentioned, do give your thoughts, suggestions, comments in any of these ways. You can call, you can email. Something might come to you in the middle of the night. You're like, oh, I think it should be this way. Drop us an email.
So it's like okay to just drop you an email about something that we think should be revised without having to go through the petition thing?
You can do that. I will say that, again, what Ruben earlier said, we're focusing on a select group of WACs. I'll give you a round number. I think the last time we looked at them, Travis and Brett, I believe in the 110-300 chapter, we're looking at 15 WAC sections, something like that. Pretty small number. So, and those will just be started this year. We're not sure. It takes a while to get them vetted and get input from all of our tribes and stakeholders, including you all. So it will take a while to change those. But Julie, if you have something in mind, you can certainly email me and I can see if it's on the list right now, today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Looks like there's a general announcement in the chat too about Wenatchee's meeting has been moved to the college.
Yeah.
All right, it looks like the Menti is up for this last talk. I didn't say too much this last session. My power went out in my house. But between Julie and I know one of us will be emailing you so we can bug you about some of the WACs.
Perfect. No problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. This was a topic that we thought was going to be really, really important to us providers, and it showed with all the questions, I think, family and centers wide. So thank you so much. We have Ruben coming up. He's already introduced himself as he was part of the chat, but he is now going to go ahead and introduce the new child care complaint unit. It's from the Early Learning Budget Concepts. And take it away, Ruben. We are really excited to hear about this.
Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it. And I feel like I've mentioned it before, but oh, where'd the slide deck go? Where's that it?
I don't see it anymore.
It's okay. I'll just talk about it. So sure, I know most of you have heard, a lot of you have heard, in licensing division, we are asking the legislation in 2025 some more FTEs, some more licensing staff. A lot of you have heard me say this before, but we are climbing in our license provider across the state. We are right around 6,000, and the trend even continues to go up. So we have about 84 licensors across the state with an average caseload, some at 65, 75, 80, and this is too much. So we are asking the legislation for about 20 FTEs, which is licensors and supervisors and administrative support staff to create a, we haven't exactly named it, whether it's a complaint unit, and these staff are responsible for conducting all investigations in licensed childcare, taking that off of our current licensors' plate so they can provide some technical assistance. I know they do already, but providing some smaller caseloads and provide that technical assistance that you all deserve. So I am not, we don't know if it's going to be funded. I'll be honest with you. This is kind of the first steps is to include it into the department's decision package, early learning bill, and then it'll have to show up on the governor's budget. So there is a chance that we will submit it and the governor's budget will not be included. And if that's the case, then we won't be getting these FTEs. But wanted to give you kind of a update of kind of where we're at. We're submitting this this summer, and in hopes to really kind of streamline the investigative process, getting them done quicker, guys. So they're not kind of sitting out there. And again, taking it off our current licensors' plate. Any questions with that? Like I said, I think most of you are aware of this, but does anyone have any questions regarding this ask?
I also just wanted to call out that we dropped the materials for this in the chat. So if you click on the link in the chat, you'll see a full write-up of all the decision package concepts, including this compliance and complaint unit. So if members want to take some time to review the other decision packages that DCYF is considering, you can find more information in the handout there.
So Ruben, are you going to go over how the process would operate? I mean, what a provider would expect to go through?
Julie, that is a great question. I'm so glad you asked. We have not figured out the how. Right now, we're just trying to get the what, right? To be honest with you, we're just figuring out trying to get the FTEs for this, right? To build the capacity and on the licensed childcare team. How we do this, we're going to be coming to you guys. We're going to be coming to the childcare committee of how this should work. You know, should we centralize this? Do we add, you know, we think we have like 16 or 17 childcare licensing units across the state. Do we just add one complaint investigator to the units, you know, and how this is going to look like? So we have, Julie, we have not figured out the how we would implement this. And we're gonna be asking you guys actually how you think it should work if we are able to get these FTs.
Well, I would go back to a comment that was earlier in the day, probably related to something else, but if it goes to a new FTE person to investigate, maybe there's a compliance disagreement between a licensor and a provider. That's what we're talking about, right? Also, like, okay. So I would also ask that like a Zoom conversation with that licensor and the provider just be kind of automatic for that process. Maybe even, you know, maybe even having a support person for each side. So like maybe that person, maybe the let's say it's me, maybe I'm disputing something and then I say, okay, well, I would like to have a colleague join the Zoom so that there's objectivity on both sides. It's not just like there's 3 DCYF people and I'm on here explaining my side, you know?
Right. Yeah, and we have time, Julie. Like I said, if this was to pass, you know, has to be on the governor's budget, right? And then it has to pass legislation, right? And it wouldn't be until July of next year before it was funded. And then we'd obviously want to spend a few months to figure out kind of how we want to implement this too, right? So it's a ways down the road, but we need it, you know? And if we don't get them, we need to look at our current resources of how we can kind of, you know, streamline this process a little bit smoother. We'll work on that too, Julie, if we don't get the FTEs, right?
Yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years as a center provider, but before that I was a family home. And I don't remember the name of my first licensor, but it was such a supportive relationship. I called and told her anytime there was a parent that was upset about anything. She gave me a lot of good tips. I was just starting out and all that. It was just support, support, support. And so it'd be nice if we could get back to that. So removing the complaint issues between providers and licensors, I think would be a good step.
Yeah, Julie, I 100% agree with you. I think, wasn't Jody your licensor? Or was she your
She was,
licensor in the center?
but I was already a center by then.
Okay.
Yeah, my first center licensor was Carrie Lewis, but I don't remember my family home licensors.
Yeah, Julie, I agree. We need to get back to that, right?
Okay, let's. Are you? Oh, it looks like there's nobody on the with questions in the chat.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, no questions. I think that just like what Julie said, like if the training with the licensors, and I know the turnover and I know COVID hit the licensing team really hard as it did us providers. But if there was more training and there was more thought put into that training, it would help prevent, so we wouldn't even have to have this new complaint department coming in, period. It's, you know, we've lost that connection. We've lost, just like Julie said with her first licensor. My first licensor in Snohomish County was Frances. She was amazing. And then I had Jody, then I had Courtney, and they've all been amazing. But then COVID hit and we just have lost that connection, that relationship, the partnership. So if we can be of help in that training and giving you guys the experience, like everybody's been talking about today, it's the experience that us providers have out in our centers and our homes that are going to fuel the training for you guys. And I hope that even with the WAC changes, all these new WACs that came out, it hit everybody hard. And so it's like, we're all just getting these write-ups. We're losing our insurance. Our insurance is going up. We're losing so much when there could be so much more intentional training with the licensors, hopefully to come, to prevent a lot of this negativity and the complaint department.
Yeah, and to add on that, I think that, by the way, I think new licensors are being released to go out and do monitoring visits far too quickly solo. And that happened in Katie's center where the new licensor said everybody at her site, all of the staff had to have, I think it was new TB tests. And
yes,
that's not the way the WAC is written. And Katie knew that, but yet you've got this new licensor who's coming in with authority saying this is how it is. Well, it's not how it is. You were released from, I guess, licensure training too early. So I know that being short-staffed is hard, but it'd be really nice if we knew that new licensors were going out with, you know, a more experienced licensor until they've really got the hang of it, so that we're not having to argue the WAC with them.
Yeah, and you know, we do have a robust onboarding plan for our new licensors. We don't just say, here's 80 providers, good luck. So I feel like we have a good onboarding plan, and we call it kind of a little boot camp that Candy runs, but like I said, we can do better too, Julie. I mean, but I just want to comment, you know, adding more bodies to the child care licensing team is not going to fix everything. Okay, there's things that we could do to improve and strengthen our relationship with the child care community, and I feel like we're going the right direction. You know, I think having these in-person community forums and really kind of meet you know, the local child care licensing team and have some great discussions. I think the survey at the end of the monitoring visit will also kind of help us kind of reshape some of our practice a little bit and some coaching opportunities with our staff. So, you know, we have things in the place, but at the same time, guys, we have a lot of, which is awesome. We have a lot of licensed providers. Like I said, I don't remember the last time we were at 6,000 licensed providers in the state. And we also need some more FTEs too, so we can lower some caseloads and streamline some of our processes as well. So it's all the above, right?
Yeah, I agree with you about the survey. I think it's going to be great, and we're all eager to have a broad discussion about that in August. And by the way, Ruben, I just want to say, I think the provider community is just really lucky that you took on this role, and I hope you're sticking with it.
Yeah, we're hoping you stick with us even with a governor change next year. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, guys. I will stay as long as they'll have me.
And I think the surveys will be great for positive and negative. I don't think licensors get positive feedback to their supervisors either. So I think on the flip side, from a provider, that if we do have a great licensor or there was a great experience, that we can push that up to their supervisors so they get that positive feedback too.
Excellent point, Katie. I like that. I agree.
I just wanted to chime in. I love hearing the ideas, because if some of the work is being taken off of a licensor or they're adding more caseloads, that creates some opportunity for them to do more technical assistance, for us to do more partnering, to have more relationship. And I know that there was a pilot that was run with organizational licenses, and that was a big thing that came out, was that relationship building meant a lot to that process. And this could help create some space and maybe building in some structure to do that, to make that intentional or put that into the process. So I love hearing the ideas as ways that we can kind of build new things in.
So there's a comment from, it's unrealistic to expect license on the wax due to the enormous volume of the wax, just as it's unrealistic for providers. We need to get back to licensing being focused on health and safety rather than conflating quality with health and safety. Looks like Anne is saying we're really close to that 6,000. Any other questions, guys, about the new? Oh, does that number reflect FFN, or is that just licensed centers? Does it include home providers?
Susan, that's centers, family homes, and school age programs. So FFN is right around 2,000.
And outdoor nature-based, that number's included.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that number's included. Okay.
But not family, friends, and neighbors or license exempt.
Okay. Okay. Katie, did you want to? I mean, it seems like we're about done with this topic.
Yeah, I'm surprised we don't have too many more comments coming in, but I think until
maybe
we
it's
get
because the
closer
money's
to
not
it,
there.
maybe- Yeah. So, any other questions for Ruben while we have him on the line?
I do want to, Katie, kind of add something. When I was driving, I heard some examples of some things that have come up during a monitoring visit. So that was concerning to me, some of the things that were, that I kind of heard that we were citing. I mean, you guys keep on hearing from either it's myself or Travis and Debbie Groff of what our expectations should be out in the field. And then when I hear examples, I'm like, wow, is that really happening out there? So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not, right? So I just want to reiterate what kind of Travis said. It's like, we need to go to the supervisor. We need to go to AA. We need to know about this, because if we don't know about this, we're assuming things are going to, how we expect our licensors to do, right? And so these things need to go up the chain. And so it could be an opportunity to really kind of coach our staff on some of the things with room incident and other things I heard.
Thanks for
Well, and I
that.
think what the survey would help, because then you know what region and then who the supervisors are gonna be that are either stepping in or not stepping in. So that gives you guys a clue of the area that you need to work with.
We're not out to get you guys. You heard me say this before. We're not out to get you, right? We have a job to do, and we all do, right? So it's all about relationships and, you know, strengthening that partnership. So that's what
I think
we need
what
to
gets
do.
confusing though is sometimes it feels like something should have been like, why isn't that just TA? Why am I being written up because the corner of the cot piece was cracked and I said I could go home and replace it because I have a box of supplies? Why isn't that just so that's what I think providers think a lot of times. Why is that so important to put on my record where you know, why not just tell me and I'll tell you it'll be fixed in 3 hours? Why isn't that enough? That used to be enough for most of my licensors, but it seems like it's up to every licensor whether or not they choose to make it a write-up or a TA. We don't know. It depends on who our licensor is that time.
I agree.
Maybe what Susan said in the chat about things, you know, getting back to health and safety. It'd be nice if write-ups were pertaining to health and safety and the rest of the WACs were TA. You know, as long as the provider is reasonable in actually completing or fulfilling, getting in compliance with the WAC, right?
And we have technology. So, you know, providers, if it's a TA, okay, we'll just send them a quick picture or send them a quick video, something that's been fixed within 24 hours, 48 hours. That is more logistical than having to go back, do all the write-ups, you know, and send it back. And again, these little write-ups that licensors are giving, people are losing their insurance or it's going up. So again, it's just depends on the licensor, I guess. Just like for you guys, it depends on the licensor, and you put faith in them going out to us centers and family homes. You know, we have faith in all of our staff, and sometimes our staff make mistakes. Sometimes our staff have a bad day, and that's unfortunately when the licensor shows up. So, you know, that leniency of giving each other the room to come together and talk about it, not just, oh, you're wrong. Here's your write-up. Oh, nope, I saw a broom. There's your write-up. You know, we keep bringing up the broom because it's still really happening out there. We're hearing it from providers all over the state. And it's something that's so silly, like Travis said about a broom. But it makes a big deal for us providers.
Yeah,
For
for
me,
sure.
another
So
one
I'll
that
be bringing this up in tonight's meeting, guys. I mean, bring this up in these community forums. Let's have some discussion, right? So
Yeah.
these are
For me,
kind of the
another
things that we
one
need to
that
talk about in these community forums.
sorry. Another one that came up for me, COVID kind of put an end to, at least temporarily, the use of, you know, kids doing the toothbrushing, which I always thought was problematic to require. It's like, there's so many things that go into planning a curriculum, and nobody says you have to do handwriting every single day, but dang it, you got to do toothbrushing every single day. And then COVID brought to light how unsanitary and problematic that was, and providers stopped doing it. But now, you know, I guess the expectation is we go back to that, but that's challenging. You don't want germs spreading. So anyway, that's just another one that's people find ways to get around that rule, but I don't believe that the rule should exist. So I know that Marlene put the community childcare forums webpage in the chat, and we mentioned that tonight is Wenatchee. There's other ones planned and scheduled. Spokane is coming up in July, Yakima in September, Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver. They're all having these forums. So use the link and go to the forum. You'll be there with your regional and with statewide folks. I think we're able to wrap up early.
I think so
we've,
too.
we've got our next meeting coming August 14th. We've got a bunch of topics that came up today that we're going to try to get on the next agenda. If not, they would come on the one after that. And next month, we will be talking with Travis about the survey. After a monitoring visit, you'd be able to fill out, and hopefully it's an anonymous survey about how that visit went for you. And then my understanding is they've been building the back end so that they have a system to where the data can be looked at and who will be looking at it. Because we don't want it to just fall in the void. I did a survey and then nothing happened with it, right? The mentee, we want to make sure that we've got everybody's doing the Survey Monkey or the mentee or whichever one it is for each topic. Do we have one for this topic, Jessica? I guess it can probably be captured in an earlier one since they didn't have the money. We don't have much of a response this time. When will we know, Ruben? When will we know?
As far as the supervisor in Wenatchee? Are you asking that? What was the question, Julie?
She's asking about the complaint unit piece. Like, when will we know about that?
Oh, we won't know, and the governor's budget comes out, I think, probably December. So if it's on the governor's budget, yeah, probably the end of this year, we'll know if it's on the governor's budget.
Ruben, there's a question and it says, will providers have a say in Wenatchee supervisor?
Yeah, Carrie, Travis will know more about this. I'm not in the, like I said, I think they're close in hiring someone. I'm not sure where they're at, but I'll check with Travis and we can talk about that tonight in tonight's forum for where we're at. I know interviews were done.
So, Teresa, I think your comment is really important, and and maybe this is something that might get factored into that survey, so that if you're having a really uncomfortable interaction, that can be expressed, and there are there's a structure of folks to communicate with. So there's an area administrator that is over the supervisors. So if you're feeling unheard, that's another way to reach out there.
I just wanted to jump in. I just got a message from Julie that her power is flickering, so there must be something going on the peninsula, but I think she was going to wrap us up, so I don't know if Dave or Katie is available for that. Well, I can jump in. Were there any other last questions or comments, Brett, from you or anybody?
I just appreciate everybody taking the time, and I appreciate everybody continuing to express themselves, because that's the only way that we can kind of figure this out is try to keep having conversations, try to keep working at it from different solutions. I think that you know, we're humans just like everybody else, and so you know, just kind of acknowledging that sometimes we might miss something or we might mess up, and we want to keep the dialogue going and keep communicating. So I just appreciate everybody showing up.
Sandra, did you have something to share?
I just, first of all, I want to thank everyone. A lot of information, and just encourage us. We're going to be going through a lot of things in the next couple of months with new governor coming, new budget coming, and things like that. And if we can just keep the lines of communication open, I think that it will make us a stronger and more cohesive workforce. So we thank you for the information that you do share with us.
Thanks, Sandra. All right, so we're almost at time. Jessica, thank you so much, Anne and Brett. Jessica's gonna throw another survey link in the chat for the meeting reflection survey. There it is. Thanks, Jessica. So if everybody could just take a moment to click on that SurveyMonkey link and provide your feedback from today's meeting, we'd appreciate it. The next provider supports meeting will be on August 14th. But as a reminder, we also have that ELAC FSKA recommendation report development session in July. We'll be sharing information about how to join that meeting as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining us.